Welcome to another session of the UTF Product Design Bootcamp. We are currently looking at design system documentation. In trying to come up with a design system, we have come up with a grid system, a typography system, and a shadow system. You can reference the links in the description to see how we came up with an industry standard grid, typography, and shadow systems. In today's class, we are going to focus on how to come up with an industry standard color system using or referencing the material design guide. A color system in material design is built around color rows, and these rows are defined separately for light and dark theme. This means that we have color rows for light theme and we have color rows for dark theme. Over here, these are the color rows for light theme. And if I scroll over to this region, we are going to see the color rows for dark theme. We can manually build the color system from scratch by following the material design framework, or we can speed up the process by using the material theme builder plugin to generate an industry standard color system very quickly. However, coming up with an industry standard color system generally involves the following steps. So anytime you want to come up with a color system, there are a few steps that you actually have to follow. The steps are summarized over here. We have the first step being choose your key colors. After choosing your key colors, the second step is to generate what is referred to as a tonal palette for the key colors that you have chosen. Then after that, we are going to derive the color rows. And after that, we are going to create a style guide and repository which will be comprised of reference styles and system styles. So let us look at how we can actually implement these steps one after the other. We are going to begin with step 1, which says choose your key colors. Choosing your key colors largely depends on how color schemes are actually used in products. Using color schemes in products is actually used for things like expression or branding style. This is where you actually give the product an identity. So this is one of the major uses of color schemes in design. Another use of color scheme in design is actually for semantic expression or for semantic meaning, where colors are used to express meaning instead of appearance. Now this is where you use colors such as red colors for warning or danger signs. This is where you use colors such as warning colors or error colors or success colors. Now, aside from the purposes of expression and semantic meaning, another general use of colors in design is for visual accessibility. And by visual accessibility, we are referring to the ability for you to actually combine colors in such a way that they give good color contrast that makes their usage accessible. So this is where colors are used to create an accessible pair combination based on the magnitude of the difference in their tonal values. Now, these are the three major uses or applications of colors in design. Now, based on these, our colors in this design system will generally be divided into three major categories. So we are going to have brand or identity colors, semantic colors, and also we are going to have background colors. But before we actually start grouping colors into these three categories, I want us to look at how material design actually recommends that we choose our key colors. So quickly, I'm going to go over to material design. Now in material design, the key colors are actually divided into 6. We have the primary key color, we have the secondary key color, we have the tertiary key color, we have the neutral key color, we have the neutral variant color, and also if you scroll down, we also have what is referred to as the error color, which is an example or an application of a semantic color. In our own color system, we are going to actually group some of these colors into categories. We are going to have the primary color, the secondary color, and the tertiary color as brand or identity colors, since these are the major colors that actually give a brand or the product is identity. So I'll come back here to Figma, and over here, for our color system, we have three major categories. We have the brand or identity colors, which are divided into the primary color, the secondary color, and the tertiary color. And after that, we have another category of colors, which are referred to as semantic colors. Now, semantic colors are colors that express meaning, or you can say that they are colors that do not focus on appearance, but instead, they are colors that focus on system status and feedback. So they are assigned functional roles such as success, error, warning, and they are also used for giving specific information that actually express meaning. So over here we have the error color, we have the success color, and also we have the warning color. So these three colors will be under semantic colors. Now, after the semantic category, we have another category which is referred to as the background colors or the surface colors. Now, under background or surface colors, we have two colors in that category, which are the neutral color and the neutral variant color. So in our case, we are going to have about 8 different colors with a group of them put into 3 categories. So generally we have brand or identity colors, we have semantic colors, and also we have background colors. So now let's look at these categories one after the other. We are going to begin by looking at brand or identity colors. Now under brand or identity colors, we have the primary color, the secondary color, and the tertiary color. And the primary color for most designs is equally called the brand color, and that's why over here we have primary or brand color. Now let's look at how we can actually come up with our primary or our brand color. If we are able to come up with our primary or brand color, we are going to use that primary color to come up with our secondary color and our tertiary color. So the first question becomes, how do I come up with my primary color, or how do I come up with the primary key color? Now, from the competitor analysis that we carried out based on our current website projects, we are actually making a design for a wind turbine organization that belongs to the renewable energy industry. And from the competitor analysis under the website design language, we already know that the most used colors for such a wind turbine company are blue or green. Of course, for the most used colors for every website, we usually have gray, white, and black, which makes up more than 50% of every website. But then the color with which we are going to remember, let's say an application or a website, is usually the brand color or the primary color. That can actually be done by carrying out your competitor analysis. And in carrying out the competitor analysis, we actually went to other websites in that particular industry and carried out what is referred to as a website inspection. So since we are designing for a wind turbine organization, or since we are designing a wind turbine website, we have actually gone to other wind turbine websites. For example, we have gone to this wind turbine website, which is a competitor of the current website that we want to design for. And we have carried out what is referred to as a website inspection. Now that I am on one of these competitors' websites, if you want to carry out a website inspection, you can use the CSS Peeper extension to carry out your website inspection. So I can come over here, click on the CSS Peeper extension, and when it comes up, I have the ability to easily hover on different web page elements and then look at the color that is used for that particular website. So now that I have brought up the CSS Peeper extension, I have the ability to just move my mouse around and then inspect the most important elements on the web page, like the call to action elements or other text where the primary color for this particular website is used. Now, if you want to carry out a website inspection using the CSS Peeper extension, once you actually launch the extension like I have over here, just come over to an element like the text and over on it. You can see the moment I hover on this, we have a little tooltip come up there that talks about the color that is used in this particular website. What I'm going to do is I'll come over here and then bring up that competitor's website. I'll simply go to Vestas, which is the name of my competitor's website. And once that loads up, I'll come back here and I'll click on the CSS Peeper extension. Now you can see that I can inspect the color that is used in this website. Now you can see that once I hover on this text, I can see that from that particular tooltip that comes up, it says text color. And for the text color, we can see that the code that is used for the primary color of this text is 005 AFF, right? That is the primary color of this particular website. Now you can carry out inspection on other elements on this particular web page of this website. You can see that if I hover on this, I also have the primary color come up there, and it is that same primary color that is used for things like the call to action elements like the CTAs or buttons on this particular website. So with that, I have carried out an inspection on this particular website, and I now know primary color that is used for this website. So I'm going to go over to Figma and try to bring up this primary color. I'll simply come over here, and then I'll create a simple frame. I'll come over here, create a simple frame. And for the primary color that is used on that particular website, code is 005 AFF. So we have this particular shade of blue used as the primary color on that website. Now, remember that we are trying to come up with a primary color for our own products. And coming up with a primary color for your own products simply means that you have to actually look at other products or other websites that belong to that same industry that you are designing for. So now we have looked at one of those websites, which is one of our competitors' websites. Now we'll go to another website, which is also a wind turbine website. Since I am trying to design a wind turbine website, right? I'll come over here, click on the CSS Peeper extension, and then begin to carry out a website inspection, inspecting the colors that is used for web page elements like the headings and CTAs, since those are some of the applications for the primary color. Now, once I hover on this, you can see that the text color over here is, in this case, is 005 08F, right? Or 005 08F. Yeah, that's the text color over here. So that's, in this case, is the primary color, because you can see that that's the color that is used for the logo. That's the color that is used for most particular areas of this website. That's the color that we have over here. That's also the color that we have over here, which is actually a blue color in this case. So if you bring out or bring up your CSS Peeper extension, all you need to do is over on any area where the color is actually used, and with the tooltip that comes up, you are going to get the text color or the color code of that particular element that you are inspecting. So in this case, the text color here is 005 08F. So I can come back here to Figma, make a copy of this, and try to look at color that I just inspected. So I have 005. Let's check that again quickly. This is 005 08F. So 005 08F. Now I have this. Now we have looked at two particular websites in that same industry that we want to design for, and we've seen that the colors that are used, or the color that is used in one of the websites, is this particular shade of blue color here. Then we checked for another website and we saw that the color that's used is this particular shade of blue color over here. So we now know that more often than not, for websites in the renewable energy industry or for the wind turbine website specifically, blue is a color that is usually used as the primary color. Now, if you carry out website inspection on most other wind turbine websites or other websites in the renewable energy industry, you get to realize that the most used colors are either blue or green. So now that we know that the most used colors that are used in that industry are blue or green, when you want to actually design your own website, you could decide to use any of the colors as your primary color. So we could go with blue as a primary color, or we could go with green as the primary color. Now, there are cases where you may want to use even a combination of both as your primary color, right? So you may want to use blue and green together inside the website. In that case, one of them will definitely dominate the other. So blue could be, let's say, the primary color, and then green could be the secondary color, right? Using them inside the website. So even if you are using both colors, definitely one of them will be dominant inside the website. But in our case here, I just want to pick either blue or green as our primary or brand color. So for my own case, I'm going to be picking blue as my primary color. So in trying to come up with my color system, I already know that my primary color in this case is going to be blue. Now that I know that my primary key color is going to be blue, the next question becomes, what shade of blue am I going to use as my primary color, because there are different possible shades of blue that you could have as your primary key color. So now that we have concluded that we are going to be using a blue color as our primary color, I'll come over here, select this frame, and then come over to the color picker. And then first thing I'm going to do is that I'm going to change the hue value to a hue value of blue. Now I already know that the blue color has a hue value of about 240. So I'll come over here and then put in a value of 240 there. Now I am already in the blue part of the spectrum of my color. Right now you can see that this region is blue. Now in choosing your primary color, you want to choose your primary color from a region where you have a lot of chroma, or from a region where you have a lot of saturation or color, right? You can come over here and see that for your primary color, the tip that is given here in choosing the primary color is that the primary color should be richly saturated, which simply means that the primary color is a color that should have a lot of saturation. So for that reason, in choosing your primary color, you want to choose your primary color from a region where you have the blue color present. And you can see that this blue color is very present in this particular region. So you could choose your primary color from anywhere within this region. So I could come over here. Let me make a copy of this quickly. Bring it down. Make another copy. Place it here. Select this. Bring up the color picker again. Change this to a value of 240 for my blue colors. So if I want to actually select my primary color, I could come over here and just take this handle, drag it to this point, and I could use this as my primary color. Let me select this and take this out. So I could use this as my primary color, or let me make a copy of this, bring it here. If I don't want to use this as my primary color, I could come over here, select the handle, and then bring it to, let's say, this particular point here. I could also use this as my primary color. You could also use this as a primary color, right? You could pick any particular color within this very saturated region and use as your primary color, depending on whether you want your UI interface to be looking vibrant or muted. If you want it to be looking very vibrant, you pick a very vibrant looking color. If you want it to be looking a bit muted, then you can actually pick darker shades of blue in this case as your primary color. But the most important thing is that your primary color should be richly saturated, and it should be within this particular region that you have here, because this is the region that has chroma, or this is the region that has the color or the hue color actually present inside the color picker. So you can pick any color within this region and use that as your primary color. So in my own case, I'm going to select this and decide on a primary color that I'm going to be taking for my shade of blue. So I'll come over here. I have a primary color in mind, so I'll just put in the code in my own case. I'll be putting in 006DEF, and then I'll be taking this as my primary color. Now note the fact that instead of picking a color by yourself, you actually decide to use any of the colors that you get here from website inspection. So over here, after inspecting this and seeing that the test color over here has a code of 00508F, you could actually decide to use this particular blue color also for your website. Or after inspecting any of the websites of your competitors, you decide to pick the color that is used in that particular website and also use for your own website, right? But if you want to actually just pick a custom color, the guide you should use is that the color that you are picking should be richly saturated. So in my own case now, this is my primary color. So if I come over to the color picker, you can see that for my primary color, I've chosen a particular blue color, right? That is within this particular saturated region of the color picker. So with that, I have selected my primary color. After selecting my primary color, the next thing you want to do is that you want to obtain your secondary color, and then you want to obtain your tertiary color. After getting your primary color, colors like your secondary color and your tertiary color can actually be obtained from the primary color just following a few guidelines. So now that I have selected a primary color, let's see how I can obtain other brand colors from my primary color. So I will go over to the next color or the next brand color, which is the secondary color. Now the secondary color is equally referred to as a complementary color, because the secondary color is meant to actually complement your primary color. Now, complementing your primary color simply means that the secondary color should be a color that lives in harmony with your primary color. It should be a color that does not fight with your primary color for attention. So that's what I mean by living in harmony with the primary color. So your primary color and your secondary color should actually be able to work together in unity or live in harmony when they are actually used on a particular interface. So after getting your primary color, the next question becomes, how do you get your secondary color? Now, aside from the fact that your secondary color complements your primary color, your secondary color could also be a color that gives enough contrast with your primary color, which simply means that if you are using a primary color that is light, right, you could actually use a secondary color that is dark, okay, so that you can have a good contrast between the secondary color and the primary color. But both of them must be able to live together in harmony, or they must be able to be used in unity, right? So what we are going to do now is that we are going to look at the tips that we are going to follow in order for us to actually come up with a good secondary color that can actually be used in harmony with our primary color. So over here, you can see that there's a tip that says, in order for you to get your secondary color, you can just reduce the brightness of the primary color by about half the value, which simply means that after getting my primary color, if I want to get the secondary color, I can get the secondary color from the primary color by just reducing the brightness of this primary color by about half. So what I'm going to do is that I will select or copy this primary color. Then for my secondary color, I'll just come over here, paste my primary color inside this particular layer. So I'll paste to replace. Now I have my primary color over here. Now the reason I'm placing my primary color here is because I know that I can actually get my secondary color from my primary color. So now that I have my primary color here, I will come over to the color picker. And then once I bring up the color picker, I'm going to look at the brightness value of this particular color. If you are working in HSB, you could look at the brightness value. If you are working in HSL, you look at the lightness value. So it depends on what color space you are using, be it HSB or HSL. And in my case now, I am working with HSB, so I'm going to be looking at the brightness value of this particular primary color and try to tweak the brightness value so that I could get a secondary color. Now, since the tip says that getting your secondary color can be done by reducing the brightness by about half the original value, then I'm going to come over here. I'll come to the color picker. Then I'll take note of the value of this primary color in terms of its brightness. I can see that this has a brightness value of 94 at this particular point. So what I'm going to do is that I'm going to reduce this value by half. Right? I'm going to reduce it by 2 so that I can get half the value that I have over here. So if this is 94, if I'm to reduce that, I'm going to have a value of 47 as the brightness, and the moment I click on my enter key, it's going to change this brightness value to a value of 47, and I'll have my secondary color. So I'll click on my enter key, and now you can see that I have a secondary color that is contrasting with the primary color and also can be used together with the primary color in such a way that there's harmony between the primary color and the secondary color. So that is the first tip in trying to get your secondary color. Right? Now there are other tips which we are going to look at, but first of all, let's start by working on the brightness of the primary color. So once you have your primary color, a simple guideline that you could actually use to get your secondary color is to just reduce the brightness of the primary color by 2. Alright, so that's what we've done to get half the brightness, and then you have a secondary color that you could use. Now after getting your secondary color, the next brand color we have there is referred to as the tertiary color. Now the tertiary color could also be gotten from the primary color, just the way the secondary color was gotten from the primary color. So since we can get the tertiary color from the primary color, I will come over here. I'll also copy the primary color and then paste it here so that I could use it to actually get my tertiary color. Now the property of the tertiary color is that the tertiary color, or a tip or guideline you could use, is that the tertiary color should have an intermediate brightness value between the primary color and the secondary color. So remember that for the secondary color, it's got half the brightness value, but the tertiary color should have an intermediate value between that of the primary color and the secondary color, because the tertiary color enables easy transition between the primary color and the secondary color. So in order for us to get the tertiary color, we are going to be picking a brightness value that is in between that of the primary color and the secondary color. So in order for me to actually obtain my tertiary color, I will come over here, select that primary color, and then try to pick a brightness value in this case that is in between the primary color and the secondary color, and use that as my tertiary color. Now, if I'm to inspect my primary color over here has a brightness value of about 94, which is fine. My secondary color has a brightness value of half that amount. For that reason, my secondary color has a brightness value of 47. So my tertiary color is going to have a brightness value in between 47 and 94. So in this case, for my tertiary color, I could just come over here, select this, and then come to the color picker and give that a value in between 47 and 94. So I could just come over here and pick a value of 60 and use that as my tertiary color. Alright, so now I have my primary color sorted, I have my secondary color sorted, and I have my tertiary color sorted. So after getting your primary color, divide the brightness by 2, you are going to have your secondary color. After getting your secondary color, you want to get your tertiary color. Your tertiary color should have a brightness value in between your primary color and your secondary color, because it enables easy transition between them, right? So for that reason, we picked a brightness value that was in between this primary color and this secondary color, and now we have our tertiary color over here. Now, this is one very important tip or guideline that you could use when you are trying to come up with your secondary color and your tertiary color from your primary color. But you can see that by just using the brightness value, or by just tweaking the brightness value to get the secondary and tertiary color, what we have over here looks like a monochromatic combination of colors, because we are seeing that these colors are actually looking very, very close to each other because they all have the same hue value, and for that reason the combination is looking monochromatic because we all have a very large amount of blue color in each of these colors. Now, a better way or a better approach or another tip or guideline that you could actually apply in order for you to have better colors for your secondary and tertiary color is applying a principle that is referred to as the principle of perceived brightness. So I'm going to come over here and try to explain the principle of perceived brightness. The principle of perceived brightness makes us understand that certain colors appear to be subjectively brighter than others even if they have the same saturation or the same brightness value. Now, for example, I'll make a copy of this color, this yellow color, and then I'll place it here. And then make a copy of this red color and then place it over here. Now, if we are to look at these two colors closely, you'll see that one color actually appears to be brighter than the other. So in this case, this yellow color appears to be brighter than this red color over here, as you can see. But if I should select this particular color and then come over here and check for the properties of this color, you can see that for these yellow colors, for the fact that it's yellow, it has a hue value of 60, which is fine. Then if I should select this one, the red color, for the fact that it's red, has a hue value of 0, which is fine. But you can see that this color is appearing brighter than this. So aside from the hue values, which actually represent the color, let's check for other properties that we could use to compare this color, which is this yellow color, to this red color. So with this yellow color selected, I'll come to my color picker, and now I'm going to check for things like the saturation. Now, for the saturation of this particular color, you can see that this has a saturation of 100, right? And then for the brightness, it also has a value of 100%, which simply means that for our yellow color over here, it has a saturation of 100%, a brightness of 100%, and even an opacity value of 100%. So the saturation, brightness, and opacity, they are all 100%. So I'll come back now and select the next color, which is the red color over here, and then check for those same properties. You can see that this also has a saturation of 100%. This also has a brightness of 100%. And this equally has an opacity of 100%, which simply means that these two colors have the same value of saturation, they have the same value of brightness, and they have the same property. Yet you can see that one color is appearing or seeming to be brighter than the other, right? So this is what we mean by the principle of perceived brightness, because comparing these two colors that have the same saturation, these two colors that have the same opacity and the same brightness, we are seeing that despite the fact that they have those properties the same, the yellow color is actually brighter or looking brighter than the red color. But if you come over to the color picker, you can see that they have the same brightness value. red over here has a brightness of 100%, right? And also yellow over here has a similar brightness of 100%. So they have the same brightness value, but however, we have the yellow color looking lighter or looking brighter than the red color. Now, this is what we mean by perceived brightness. This color is said to have a higher perceived brightness compared to the red color. Now, for that reason, under perceived brightness applications, colors are divided into two categories. We have colors that are referred to as light colors. We have colors that are referred to as light colors, and also we have colors that are referred to as dark colors. So under perceived brightness applications, colors are divided into two. We have light colors and dark colors. Colors like this, colors like yellow that has a higher perceived brightness than red, they are under light colors. Then colors like red, they are under dark colors. Now for the light colors, in this case, where we have yellow, for short, there's an acronym that is referred to as YCM. Y representing yellow, C representing cyan, and M representing what? Magenta. So these are the three light colors under perceived brightness. We have yellow, we have cyan, and then we have magenta. Then for our dark colors, they are taken as the RGB colors. RGB being arrow for red, right? And that's why over here we have red. Then G for green, and then B for what? For blue. So under perceived brightness, we have two sets of or categories of colors: light colors and dark colors. We have three dark colors and we have three light colors. The dark colors are the RGB colors, which include red, green, and blue, right? And then the light colors are the YCM colors, which include yellow, cyan, and what? And magenta. Now you can see that these colors have been placed here in an alternating manner. Right, we have the red color first. In this case, this is a dark color. Then we have the yellow color, which is a light color. Then we have the green color, we have cyan, and also we have the blue color, and then we have magenta, just the way the colors are inside this color wheel that we have over here. Now you can see that we have red coming first, right? We have yellow coming next. Then before we have green, before we have cyan, before we have blue, before we have magenta over here. So just the way the colors are placed here, that's how we have them here. Perceived brightness application makes us understand that at every point in time, any color or most colors that you are going to pick are going to be in between a dark color and a light color. So to further explain this, I'm going to put in the categories for the light colors, all right? Or let me start with the dark colors. Dark colors include the RGB colors. So I'll put in RGB. Then the light colors are the YCM colors. So I'll put in YCM, which is fine. So RGB represents red, green, and blue. So red, green, and blue over here represents the dark colors. The YCM represents yellow, cyan, and magenta. Alright, so those represent the light colors that we have over here for perceived brightness. Now these colors have been placed in an alternating manner, as you can see here. So we have red taking first, which is this, which is a dark color. And after that, we have a light color placed there. In this case, I have letter Y, which represents yellow. You can see yellow over here. So I have a dark color, a light color. And after that, I have the green color, right, which is also a dark color. You can see it over here. After green, the next color after it is a light color, which is cyan. You can see it over here. And after that, I have a blue color, which is a dark color. And after this dark color, I have the last color over here, which is magenta, which is a light color, right? So in this case, I have a dark color, I have a light color, I have a dark color, I have a light color, I have a dark color, I have a light color, alternating just like that. Now, what this perceived brightness application is letting us know is that most times when you choose colors, those colors that you've chosen will always be in between a dark color and a light color. Alright, so if for example I just bring in a frame and then try to bring up my color picker, you will note that definitely a color like red has a hue value of 0, right? That's why we have this value of 0 over here. Now, what do I mean by hue value of 0? Let me just create a frame. Let me draw a frame here. And then if I come to my color picker and change this, you can see that for this particular frame that is created, as at this point, it's actually a neutral gray. But over here in the color picker, we can see that we have a red coloration here with a hue value of 0. So it simply means that a red color has a hue value of 0, right? Now, if I want to get a yellow color, I'll just come over here, change the hue value to 60. Now I have a yellow color. If I want to get a green color, I'll come over here, change the hue value to 120. Now I have a green color over here. So just like that. So what we have at the top here represents the hue value of these particular colors inside that particular color picker. Now, the principle of perceived brightness is letting us know that if you pick a color, right, more often than not, those color or any color that you've picked will actually be in between a light color and a dark color. So aside from these perceived brightness colors here, let's pick any other color. So I'll come over here, select this frame, and then pick a color that's not part of this perceived brightness color. So I could come over here and pick a color of, let's say, orange, right? I could pick this and I have this orange color. Now, this orange color over here, as you can see, it has a hue value of 30, which simply means that it's going to be in between this color of red and this color of yellow. So it's going to be in between them, right? That's why it has a hue value of 30. Now, what are the applications of this principle of perceived brightness? There are times where you want to actually make a color have more chroma, or there are times where you want to actually simulate a saturation increase in a color, which simply means that there are times where you want a color to have more saturation without actually increasing the saturation of the color from the color picker. So let's say I want to increase the saturation of this color, and I don't want to come over here and increase the saturation from this point, because you can see that at this point, the saturation of this color is already at 100%, which simply means that I can no longer increase the saturation of this color, right, from this color picker. I could apply perceived brightness to increase the saturation of this particular color. Now, to do that, what you could do is make copies of this particular color right and also to the left. Alright, I'll make a copy to the right and I'll make a copy to the left, because like I said, most colors that you are going to be picking will be in between a light color and a dark color. So if you pick a color between 0 and 60 degrees, it's going to be in between this point, right? If you pick a color that has a hue value between 60 and 120, that means it's going to be in between these two colors. If you pick a color that has a hue value between 120 and 180, it's going to be in between these two colors, just like that. So let's say I have this color, and over here, if I come to my color picker, I am already seeing that this has a saturation value of 100. So what's going to happen if I want this color to look a little bit more saturated? It simply means that I have to increase the saturation, but I cannot increase the saturation by changing the value of this color picker, because at this point I already have what is referred to as a maximum saturation here, or a maximum color intensity. So what can I do? You can apply perceived brightness and then simulate what is referred to as a saturation increase. How do I simulate a saturation increase? I'll make a copy of this, take it to the right, which is fine. I'll come over here, make a copy of this, take it to the left, and then if I want to get a saturation increase, it simply means that I have to now rotate the hue value of this color left and right. Alright, by rotating it left and right, one of them is going to give me a particular shade that is more saturated. So I could come over here for my saturation increase, I could select this and then come over here and change the hue value, or move the hue value closer to the color that is to the right of it. Alright, because we can see that yellow is the color that's just to the right of this particular orange color that we have over here, just the way it is inside this particular colorway that I have over here. So if I want to actually apply the principle of perceived brightness, I'll just rotate the hue or move the hue value to the right and also to the left. So I'll come over here, this is 30. I could make this or give it a value of, let's say I could add 6 degrees to it, I could add 8 degrees, I could add 10 degrees to it. I could make this, let's say, 38. Now I have something like this. Now you can see that this color is looking lighter. Now the reason is because to the right of this particular reference color that I have, to the right of it, I have a lighter color. Now remember that while we're comparing the yellow color and the red color, we're made to understand that yellow has more perceived brightness compared to red. Alright, so if you are moving or you are rotating your hue towards a lighter color, what's going to happen is that you are going to get a lighter version of that shade of color. Now you can see that this particular color that is here is lighter than the original one that we have over here. Alright, so that is me rotating it to the right. Now since I rotated with 8 degrees to the right, I'm also going to try to rotate this 8 degrees to the left. So I'll come over here, select this, and then instead of adding 8 to it, I'm going to remove 8 from it. So in this case, removing 8 from this, I'm going to have 22 over here. Now I have something like this, which is actually a darker shade of this particular color. So with perceived brightness, you have the ability to actually get a lighter or darker shade of a particular color. That is one of the applications. Another application is that you have the ability to also have or simulate what we refer to as a saturation increase. And that we are going to see in a couple of minutes. So how does this apply to the color system that we are trying to create? Now we know fully well that since we've gotten our secondary and tertiary color, we are seeing that we have a monochromatic combination. So what we could do is that we could apply the principle of perceived brightness to see if we could actually have a more saturated color or to have a color combination that is not monochromatic. And in order for me to do that, what I'm going to do is very simple. I'll make a copy of this, my primary color, right? Or better still, a copy of this, my secondary color. Now place it here because I already have my primary color sorted. I'm trying to have better colors for my secondary color and my tertiary color. So I'll make a copy of this secondary color that I've already gotten. I'll place it here. Then make one copy to the right, which is fine. And then make another copy to the left, which is fine. And then also my tertiary color, I'll select it, make a copy, place it here. Then make one copy to the right and also make one copy to the left. Now that I've done this, I can now apply the perceived brightness principle to these particular colors to see if I could have better shades with better saturation. All right. Now, in this case, there is actually a guide for us to do that. For our secondary colors, we are going to have minimal rotation. Then for our tertiary color, we are going to have larger rotation. Now, for our secondary color, the tip here says, after reducing the brightness by half to get this particular shade of your secondary color, which is fine, which you can use as your secondary color. If you want to actually tweak the secondary color more, you could apply this other tip that says, apply perceived brightness with minimum rotation of 5 to 8 degrees to your secondary color. So I could apply a rotation of 5 degrees, I could apply a rotation of 6, or apply a rotation of 7 or 8 to this particular secondary color, so as to have other shades from which I can pick my secondary color from. So now that I have this as my secondary color, I want to apply this rotation of 5 to 8 degrees. So in my case now, like I said, you could decide to apply any value between or within 5 to 8. So in my case, I'm going to be applying a rotation of 8 degrees to this color on the right and also applying that to the color on the left. So I'll come over here, select this my secondary color, bring up my color picker and add 8 degrees to whatever hue value that I have over there. So over here, I have this as 213, right? So if I add 8 degrees to this is going to give me a value of 221. So I'll come over here, put in 221. Then I have a color like this, which is fine. Then I'll come over here now for the color on the left. I'm going to remove that same amount of rotation from the color on the left. So I'll come over here. Since I added 8 to this on the right, I'm going to remove 8 from this on the left hand side. So if I should remove a value of 8 from this, I'm going to be having a color with a hue value of 205 at the left hand side. So now I have something like this for my secondary color. Now you can see that I have 3 different shades of color here, but you can see that one of them is actually having more chroma or more saturation. Now you can see that this actually looks more saturated. It has more of the presence of this blue inside of it compared to any of these 2 colors. So in this case, I could use this as my secondary color. Now take note of the fact that just reducing the brightness alone and getting this is fine to be used as your secondary color, right? So you could actually use this as your secondary color. But if you actually want to have that simulation of a saturation increase, or if you want to have other options from which you can pick from, you could actually pick from any of these and use as your secondary color. So I could select this and use that as my secondary color and I'm fine. I could select this and use this as my secondary color and I'm fine. Also, I could select this and use as my secondary color and I'm fine. Now in my own case, now I want to pick a color, or I want to pick the color that has more chroma, or I want to pick the shade that is more colorful here. So in this case, I'm going to be picking this as my secondary color. So I'll copy this and then come over here, paste to replace, and I have my secondary color sorted. Now you can see that we have a better looking secondary color. Now that doesn't mean that you can't actually pick from any of these, all right? You can pick any of these and use as the secondary color. But for my case, like I said, I want to pick a color that has more intensity or more saturation. So now I have this as my secondary color. Now the same principle that you applied in getting a better secondary color you could apply the same principle here and use it to get a better tertiary color. So for my tertiary colors are also called analogous colors, right? Now, analogous colors are colors that are gotten by just moving the hue value of a color around. Now, what does that mean? If I should bring in a frame here, let me create this frame and then let me try to give that frame a fill color, and let's choose any random color for this frame here. Now, for this particular color that I've chosen, you can see that the hue value is 138, right? Now, if you want to get any of these analogous colors, all you need to do is just move the hue value either to the left or to the right, just the way we did while trying out the perceived brightness application. So this is 138. If I make this a value of 142, for example, or 143, this is an example of what you could refer to as an analogous color, right? Also, if I could make this, let's say 150, this is also an example of an analogous color. So analogous colors are colors that are just around your original color in terms of their hue value. Alright, so that's for your tertiary color. Now, tertiary colors are also referred to as analogous colors, which simply means that most of them, or better tertiary colors, are gotten by actually rotating the hue value just the way we saw in the perceived brightness application. So the tip here says, for your tertiary color, use a broader rotation between 20 to 30 degrees, left and right, so you don't get a monochromatic color combination, right? So while applying perceived brightness to get your secondary color, the rotation value is usually very minimal. In this case, I have 5 to 8 degree rotation, and that's fine. But for your tertiary color, you are going to have more rotation of your tertiary color so that you can have a better color combination for your brown color. So in this case now, I can rotate between 20 to 30 degrees. So for my tertiary color, I brought it here and I made 3 copies. So I'm going to select the one at the right. And in my case, I'm going to be rotating by 20 degrees. So I'll come over here. Whatever value that I see there, I'm going to add 20 degrees to it. So this is 213. If I add 20 degrees, it's going to give me 233. So I'll come over here, put 233. I have this right to the right, which is fine. Then I'll come over here, and since I added a value of 20 to this, as I come over here, I'm going to remove a value of 20 from this. So while I have this selected, I will come over here, bring up my color picker, and then note the original hue value that I have there. So over here, I have a hue value of 213. Now, since I added 20 to the one at the right, I'll remove 20 from 213, which is the one at the left. And in this case, I'm going to be having 193 over here. So I have something like this, right? Now, what you are going to do is, since you have this 3 color combination, you could actually pick any of them and use them as your tertiary color. But in order for you to prevent having a monochromatic color combination, we are going to pick a color that doesn't really look, or a color that is not very close to these 2 colors that we have over here. Now, these 2 colors or these 2 shades are close to what we have here. So for that reason, I'm going to be picking this as my tertiary color, because it is actually a color that looks, or that is looking a bit far away from my primary color and my secondary color compared to the other 2 options, which are looking monochromatic, right? So this is going to be used as my tertiary color. So I'll copy this and then I'll paste it here and use it as my tertiary color. So with that, now I have my primary color sorted, right? I have my primary color sorted, I have my secondary color sorted, and I have my tertiary color sorted. So the rule or the guideline, because this is a guide, right? It's not like a rule that is set in stone. It is just a guide to give you colors that can actually work together in harmony. So after getting your primary color, right, what you want to do for your secondary color, very simple, reduce the brightness by half, and then you have something like this, and then apply minimum rotation. From there, you can actually pick the color that has more chroma or more saturation and use that as your secondary color, which is fine. And after getting your secondary color, if you want to get your tertiary color, go back to your primary color. In this case, you are going to pick a color that is in between your primary color, or better still, you are going to pick a color that has a brightness in between your primary color and your secondary color. That's going to be your tertiary color. And also apply the principle of perceived brightness by simply rotating the hue to have other analogous colors using a rotation angle of 20 to 30 degrees, and then you can have your tertiary color. So with that, we have our primary color sorted, we have our secondary color sorted, and then we have our tertiary color sorted for our website design. So now we are done with branding or identity colors, or better still, we are done with the brand or identity colors. So now that we are done with the brand or identity colors in terms of the primary key color, secondary key color, and the tertiary key color, it's time for us to look at the other category of color, which is referred to as semantic colors. Now, semantic colors are colors that focus more on meaning rather than appearance. And for that reason, they are used to indicate system status, right? And give feedback whenever you are interacting with UI elements. So semantic colors include the error or danger color, which is red, which is used for failures or critical states. Semantic colors include the success color, which is green. So we are going to look at the semantic colors that we are going to be using in this case. So we have what is referred to as the error or danger color. In that case, that's going to be a red shade, right? Like I said, it's used for failures and critical states. Then we also have semantic colors, which are referred to as success colors. Now, success colors are usually green, right? And they are used for confirmation or completed actions, right? Then after that, we have semantic colors that are also referred to as warning colors, which are usually, or which could have colors like orange or yellow, and they are used for expressing caution or potential risk or issues when you are actually traversing or using elements inside a website or an application, right? So for our semantic colors, which are status or feedback colors, we have three of them over here. We have the error color, we have the success color, and we have the warning color. Your error color is going to be red, right? Your success color is going to be green, and then your warning color could either be a shade of orange or yellow, as the case may be. So for our semantic colors, we are going to have a color of green over here. We are going to have for our success color is going to be green, right? So since we now know what our semantic colors are going to be, let's come over here and let's put in the shades of colors that we are going to be using for our semantic color application. Now, in trying to select your semantic colors, you know fully well that you have to also choose a particular shade of color, because it is not enough to know that my error color is going to be red and then I come over here, select this, and I come to my color picker and I just put in any shade of red, right? So one question that you may want to ask yourself is, what shade of red could you possibly use? Of course, you could use any shade of red, but you want to create a color system that has key colors that have some form of unity. So for that reason, you have to be systematic about the particular shade that you are going to be using for each of the semantic colors, which are also key colors in this particular case, right? So for my error key color, which is red, what I'm going to do is that I'm going to get that particular shade from the same primary color, because I do not want any of my semantic colors to be brighter than the primary color. I don't want my error color to be looking brighter than my primary color. So what am I going to do? I'm going to select my primary color. I'll come over here, make a copy of this, and then I'm going to place it in these particular layouts for my semantic color. So I'll come to my error color, I'll paste it there, right? I'll just paste to replace. I have it there. I'll come to my success color, I'll also paste it there, and then I'll come over to my warning color, and then I'll also quickly just paste it there. Now what I'm going to do is, since I want my error color, since I know that my error color is going to be red, I will simply select this primary color that I have over here and just come over here and change the hue value to a hue value of red, right? A color of red has a hue value of 0. So I'll come over here, change that hue value to 0. Now I have something like this. Now you can see that I have a shade that is not looking, or that is not brighter than that of my primary color, right? You can see that my error color here has the same saturation and also the same brightness as my primary color, which is fine. So this shade would actually be used as your error color. Then for my success color, I know that that color is going to be green, right? So for the RGB combination, red has a hue value of 0, which simply means that green is going to have a hue value of 120, since they are 120 degrees apart. So as I do this, okay, I think I should have selected this. I'll select this now and then give this a hue value of 120 so that I can have a green color over here, which I'm going to be using as my semantic color, right? So this now will be used as my success color. Then for my warning color, I could actually use a yellow color or an orange color. So for my warning color in this case, I'm going to be using an orange color. So in this case, I'll come over here to the hue value and change this to the hue value for an orange color, which in this case should be 30 degrees. Now I have an orange color. Now you can see how I easily got my semantic colors and how I determine the shades that I'm going to be using for these colors, right? I just picked my primary color, placed it in here, and just tweaked the hue value, right, which actually represents each of these colors, putting in their hue values or their rotation values and getting semantic colors that have the same saturation and brightness as my primary color. So that way I don't have any color here that is actually brighter than my primary color. So this is one way you can actually decide your shades when coming up or when trying to select your semantic colors. Of course, you could also use ChatGPT, right? Since you now have your primary color, your secondary color, and your tertiary color, you could prompt ChatGPT and tell ChatGPT that you want good shades that will go with this shade of a primary color, this shade of a secondary color, and this shade of a tertiary color. And ChatGPT will also give you options that you could use as shades for your what? For your semantic color. So now I have my semantic colors sorted. It's actually very important for you to know that from these semantic colors that we've actually created, some of the rows that we are going to create later, or some of the shades that we are going to develop or produce later from these semantic colors are going to be used as accent colors, right? And that's why for this category, we have semantic colors, which are status or feedback colors, and also accent colors, which are used as highlight colors, right? So some of the shades of our semantic colors are going to be used also as accent colors, which are colors that are used very sparingly in design. Now, an example of an application where some of these shades are used as an accent color could be in this particular UI mockup that we have over here. So I'm going to come over here and try to show an application of how these colors can actually be used together. Now you can see that over here we have this blue as a primary color, right? Now you can see an application of the secondary color, and you can see how the secondary color is actually living in harmony with this particular primary color, right? So you can see how the combination is actually unified. Now for our body text or description text, you can see that we have this particular line here representing a particular paragraph. So if I go to another paragraph, I see that I have a combination of text and a line as well. So in essence, for our paragraphs in this particular design, you can see that we have a line representing the beginning or start of this particular paragraph. Now you can see that this line here has some sort of an orange color, right? And it's actually looking very cool in this particular design. It is not fighting the primary color. Instead, it is actually in harmony with the entire color. Now this could be seen as an example of an highlight or accent color in this particular case, right? So that's why we are saying that some of the shades or some of the rows from our semantic colors could equally be used as accent colors or highlight colors. So for this category, we have actually categorized them as semantic and accent colors. So for our semantic and accent colors, we have our error color, success color, and our warning color, right? Just like we have them here. And we've gotten shades that actually live in harmony with our brown colors, which are the primary, secondary, and tertiary colors. So after getting our brown colors, all right, and after getting our semantic colors, the last category of colors that we are going to need for this color system are the background or surface colors. Now remember that in coming up with this color system, we are actually using material design as a guide, right? So if we are to reference material design one more time, we know that material design is letting us know that in coming up with our color system, we should have a primary key color, which we now have a secondary key color, which we now have, and we should have a tertiary key color, which we now have. Is that in our case, we are grouping these three, the primary, the secondary, and the tertiary key colors. We are grouping them together and we are calling them the brand or identity colors, which is fine. Now, material design is also letting us know that we should have one error color, right? We should have an error color. Just that in our own case here, we know that an error color is an example of a semantic color. So for our custom color system, we've decided to add two other semantic colors, which include the success color and then the warning color, right? So these are the additions that we are making for our own color system. Now, material design is also letting us know that aside from your primary color, your secondary color, your tertiary color, and your error color, we equally have what is referred to as your neutral color and your neutral variant color. which we have now grouped in our case as the background color, right? So we have grouped them as the background or surface color. And over here, under background or surface colors, we have the neutral color, right? And the neutral variant color. So the question becomes, what color shades are going to be used as the neutral key color, and what color shade is going to be used as the neutral variant color? Ordinarily, a neutral color is any color that has no chroma, which simply means that a neutral color is any color with no saturation. So if I should come over here and draw a random frame, and let's say I come to the color picker, a neutral color is gotten whenever you have a saturation of 0, right? So neutral colors are usually grays, and they are gotten when you have a saturation of 0, which simply means where there is no color inside that particular part of the color picker. Now for this color picker, the saturation begins the moment you begin to move to the right. Okay, that's when you begin to have saturation. But whenever you are at the left or at this extreme, every color that you have for this particular region is actually a neutral color, with these extreme points being complete white and these other extreme points being complete black, right? In between them, whatever you have is referred to as a neutral color. Now, the neutral color is independent of whatever color that you have here. So even if I try to rotate the hue value and change the color that I have here, you can see that this neutral color is actually not affected, because irrespective of the hue value, the neutral color has a saturation of 0. So this is what we mean by a neutral color. So a neutral color has no hue, which simply means that the neutral color has no color presence inside of it, and that color presence is what we refer to as chroma. All right, so a neutral color has no chroma inside of it. So that's what we mean by a neutral color. Now if you want to select, or if I want to select a neutral color to play the neutral key role in this particular case, now what I'm going to do is that, now that I know that my neutral color has a saturation of 0, I will come over here and ensure that this has a saturation value of 0. Alright, you can see that this has a saturation of 0. Now for my neutral color, it's usually in between black and white. So for my own case here, I want to actually pick a neutral color that is just midway in between black and white. Alright, you can see that as I am moving this around, one value is changing inside this color picker. The only value that is changing here is the brightness value, as you can see in this case. So if I move it closer to white, you can see the brightness increases. If I move it closer to black, the brightness reduces. And in my own case now, I want to pick a mid tone, which simply means a tone that is at the center, at the same distance from black and white. So I'll come over here and put in a value of 50 here for the brightness, so that I can pick a tone that's just midway between the black region and the white region. So this is what I'm going to be using as my neutral color, right? 0 saturation, and then I've decided to pick a color that is midway between the black and white region, and I've decided to use that as my neutral color. So this is going to be my neutral color. But over here we have two background colors. Here we have the neutral key color, and aside from that, we equally have what is referred to as the neutral variant color. So what's going to be our neutral variant color if I have taken my neutral key color to be this particular color that has a mid-tone, right, and has a saturation of 0? Of course, you can always check the tips that we have here that enables you to know how to come up with these particular key colors, because after coming up with these colors, the next step would be to actually create a tonal palette, all right, and that we can do simply using a plugin. So for our neutral color, let's see the tips that we have over here. Now tip number 1 says pick a color that has 0 chroma, alright, which simply means that pick a true gray. So in this case, we are going to pick a color that has no saturation inside of it, just like we've done for the neutral color. Then the neutral variant color is actually, or can actually be gotten from the neutral color. So let's assume that we've gotten a neutral color. I'll come over here for my neutral color, of my neutral key color, I'll select this. Once I select it, I'll bring up my color picker, alright. I'll make sure that the saturation over here is set to 0, which is fine. Then for my neutral color, you could actually pick any color along this particular gray area, okay, as long as the saturation is 0. I could pick this as my neutral color and I'm fine. I could take this, bring it down here, pick it as my neutral color, and I'm fine. Alright. So you could pick any color here and use it as your neutral color. Just that in my case, I just want to pick a color that is at the middle here, just in between black and white. So that's why I decided to put in a value of 50 over here, right, for the brightness, giving me a mid-tone for my neutral key color. So with that, I have my neutral key color sorted. Now my neutral variant color is a color that has a little amount of tint added to the neutral color. So how do I get my neutral variant color? My neutral variant color, I could just select my neutral key color, copy it, right, bring it over here, paste it here, and then add a little amount of tint to it. So while I have this selected, I could come over here and add a little amount of tint or a little amount of saturation to it. So I could make the saturation, let's say I give it a saturation of 10. Now you can see that I have added a bit of this particular color to this particular gray. Now it is still gray, just that in this case it is not a true gray, alright, unlike what we have here. What we have here is what you can refer to as a true gray or an absolute gray or a perfect gray. Okay, so this is a true gray or an absolute gray or a perfect gray because it has a saturation of 0. It doesn't have any color inside of it. But in this case now, what I have here is not actually a true gray because it has a bit of saturation of the color, which simply means that it has a tint, right? Or it is a tint form of gray that I have over here. So this is what you could use as your neutral variant color. But take note of the fact that my primary color is actually blue, right? So if you are actually trying to come up with your neutral variant color, you want to come up with a neutral variant color that is mixed also with that blue color of the primary. Okay, instead of selecting a neutral variant color that is mixed with a tint of red, because red is not our primary color. Our primary color is blue, so it would be best to select a neutral variant color that is mixed with the tint of the primary color. So for that reason, if I want to get my neutral variant color, what I will simply do is I could come over here, select my primary color, alright, make a copy of that, and then come over here, paste it here, I have something like this. Now, since this is a neutral color, I'll come over here. The first thing I'll do is reduce the saturation to 0. Because neutral colors have no saturation, right? I have something like this, alright? And then take the mid-tone. I'll make this 50 so that I can have the mid-tone, which is fine. Now, this could be used as my neutral color. But since this is the neutral variant color, it's going to have a bit of tint added to it. So I'll come over here for the saturation. You could give it a saturation of 4, a saturation of 5, whatever value you want to put in. Just make sure that it has a bit of the blue as part of it, right? So I'll come over here and just give this a saturation value of 10. Now I have something like this, alright? Giving me a more unified color with those of my brand color. So this I could use as my neutral variant color. So simply put, for your neutral color, just pick any color that has a saturation of 0. Now, whenever the saturation is 0, it won't matter what color you have here, because no matter how you see the hue value, saturation will always be 0 and it doesn't affect a neutral color, right? So the hue value doesn't matter whenever you are actually trying to create your neutral color. Just give it a saturation of 0 and pick a mid-tone by putting in a brightness of 50 if you are working with HSB, right? Or if you are working with HSL, put in a lightness of 50 and you're fine. But for my neutral variant color, that is actually going to be mixed with a tint or an amount of the primary color, right? So for that reason, you have to go pick the primary color, which is fine. And in this case, also pick a mid-tone, but add a bit of tint to what you actually have here. So this way, we've actually come up with a neutral key color, and then we've come up with our neutral variant color. So this is how you can come up with a neutral key color and a neutral variant color. So this is going to give you palette that is filled or full of neutral colors, and this is going to give you palette that is filled of warm grays, because whenever a particular gray or neutral color is mixed with blue, what you have is what is a warm gray. Now, assuming that my primary color was a yellow color, right? I want to assume that the primary color I chose was actually a yellow color. So I'll paste this here, and then I'll come over here and make this yellow. Let me put in a hue value of 60. Now I have a yellow color, and I wanted to pick, or I wanted to actually bring up my neutral variant color. In that case, I'll come over here, select this yellow color, right? And then go to the saturation value. Since it's a neutral color, I'll give it a saturation of 0 initially, which is fine. Now I have my handle over here. I'll select a mid-tone, right? It's not compulsory to select a mid-tone, like I said. You could select any particular gray along this part that I have here and you are fine. Just that in my case now, I'm selecting a mid-tone, right? So making that 50, right? And since this is going to be the neutral variant color, we are going to give it a tint of the primary color. So if I'm choosing a blue color, my neutral variant color should have a tint of that blue color. So I could come over here, put in a value of 10, and then I have something like this. Now you can see that this is looking closer to what? Closer to this particular yellow color. Now if you decide to give it a tint of red, in that case, your neutral variant color will be looking like, see, you can see that there's a difference between this gray color and this gray color over here, right? And I should bring that of the blue color over here. Now we have different types of grays here, right? There's a difference between these. When you have a gray that is mixed with blue, in that case, what you have is referred to as a cool gray, right? This is referred to as a cool gray. When you have a gray that is mixed with yellow or red, what you have in that case is a warm gray. So you can see that despite the fact that I gave each of them just a saturation of 10%, you can see that these grays are looking very different from each other, right? So when you are choosing your neutral variant color, make sure that you are choosing that particular gray, or you are choosing a tint of that gray from the primary color. So if your primary color is blue, you are going to choose a tint of blue, just like I did. If your primary color is red, choose a tint of red. If your primary color is yellow, choose a tint of yellow, and that way you've actually created your neutral variant color. So simply, we've been able to create all our key colors here. We have the primary color, which is fine. We have the secondary color, we have the tertiary, all making up the brand or identity colors. After that, we have the semantic and accent colors, where we decide to come up with the error color, success color, and the warning color. And then we have the background or surface color, where we came up with a neutral color that doesn't have any saturation at all, right? And then we came up with a neutral variant key color that is a tint or a gray form of your primary color. So with that, we have all our key colors sorted, right? And these are the guidelines that we use in actually coming up with each of these colors. Now remember how we came up with our secondary color and our tertiary color. After getting the primary color, we made a copy of the primary color simply. Then for the secondary color, we decided to reduce this by 2, right? We decided to reduce the brightness by 2. So we came over here and reduced that brightness by 2. So we picked a brightness of 47, which is fine. We got something like this. And then we applied perceived brightness to this with a simple rotation to the left and then to the right. Okay, we added a rotation of 8 degrees to the one at the right and the one at the left. From there, we came up with our secondary color. Then for our tertiary color, the brightness value is in between primary and secondary, right? And then we also apply perceived brightness to this to come up with our tertiary color. So that way, we've been able to come up with all of our key colors, from the brand colors to the semantic colors and then to the background colors. So now that we've come up with these colors, the next step in trying to come up with a color system is to create what is referred to as a tonal palette. So this is the next step. The first step is come up with your key colors, right? You now know how to come up with the key colors, and you now know how to come up with secondary and tertiary colors from the primary color. So now that we come up with all these key colors, the next step says create a tonal palette of the key colors. So how do you create a tonal palette of the key colors? We are going to be using a plugin, right? So come over here, go to my plugins and go to this plugin that says UI color palette. Now in your own case, you may want to install that plugin if you've not actually used it before, right? So I could come over here now. I'll click on this. Then I'll click on plugins and widgets. I'll click on that. And then I'll type in UI color palette. Right? You can see I have UI color palette. And when that loads up, I'm going to have a plugin with which I could actually create my tonal palettes. Now over here I have this plugin that says UI color palette, right? WCAG color palette. Click on that. Once you click on it, in your own case, you are going to install it, right? I already have it installed, so as I click on it now, it's actually going to get launched, and from there I'll be able to create my tonal palettes for each of these colors that I have over here. Now let me remove my panels and let's see how we could actually create a tonal palette. So once you actually launch the UI color palette plugin, what you should do is, since you want to create a tonal palette for your primary color, come over here, select the primary color. Now, what is an example of a tonal palette? An example of a tonal palette is seen here also in material design. I'll come over here and then try to see where they created a tonal palette for each of the key colors. You can see that we have our primary color over here. We have our secondary color, we have our tertiary color, we have our neutral color, and then we have our neutral variant color. Now, for our primary color, we have a number of shades here or tones that make up a palette for our primary color. Now, this is referred to as a tonal palette. For our secondary color, we have a number of tones here that make up our tonal palette for the secondary color, the same thing for the tertiary color. So we are going to create a tonal palette for each of your key colors, including the semantic or error color as we have it here in material design. So take note of that. Now, for your tonal palette that you want to create, they are going to have tonal values of 0 to 100, right? A tonal value of 0 simply means that the shade at that particular point is going to be a complete black color. A tonal value of 100 simply means that you are going to have a complete white color. Like if I come over here to material design and I try to check for the values of the tones, I'll click on this and I'll go to where it says palettes, which is fine. Now you can see that these are examples of or shades of the tonal palette. Now you can see that over here for their primary color which they use, because this is the color that material design decided to use as their primary color, right? So if I click on this, you can see that a tonal value of 0 simply means that that particular shade is going to be complete black. You can see that this is completely black, which this could be for complete black, right? If I click on this, a tonal value of 100 simply means that you are going to have a complete white tone or a complete white shade. You can see that this is complete white, all right? So take note of that. So in the same way, we are going to create a tonal palette as well. And that tonal palette is going to be comprised of a number of shades. So let's come over here, just like the way we have it in material design. You can see that we have a tonal value of 0, 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, down to 100. Now, in total, we have 14 tones over here. So we are going to create a tonal palette that is comprised of 14 tones for each of the key colors that we have over here, just like we have it here in material design. And we are going to give them these exact tonal values that we have here in material design. In order for us to do that, like I said, you simply select the color or the key color for which you want to create your tonal palette. In this case, I want to create a tonal palette for my primary key color. So I'll come over here, select my primary key color. Once I have it selected, I'll bring up my plugins, which is the UI color palette plugin. I'll click on it. Then once that loads up, it will give me the ability to actually come up with a tonal palette for that particular color. So now I have the ability to create a palette by coming here and just clicking on create, or better say, click on this button here that says new UI color palette. All right, I'll click on it. Once I click on it, this displays. Go over to where it says scale. Click on that. Once you click on that, you have this display. Come over here to where it says custom. Click on it. And once you click on it, you have options to either set up a custom palette, but you can see that we have a palette here, right, by Google, right, over on this palette by Google, and then you are going to see that exact material design palette that we just saw. Now we are going to see it over here. You see that we have material design 3, we have tonal values of 0 to 100, just like we have it over here in material design. So over here now, you come over here and click on over on Google and click on this label that says material design 3, 0 to 100 tones, right? Click on it. Once you click on it, you realize that this palette that we have here in material design will actually be displayed here for you. So I have a tonal value of 0, 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, down to 100, just the way I have it here in material design. Now, the only tone that is not available inside that particular plugin as at this time is this tone of 98, because you can see that we have 0, 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, 90, 95, 98, 99, 100, making a total of 14 tones, right? If I come back here, I have 0, 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, 90, 95, which is fine, 99, and then 100. So we don't have that particular tone of 98 here. But whenever we are going to need that tone, we are going to use a workaround to actually get that particular tone of 98. So for now, we are going to work with what we have here, right? Now, this particular naming system here, right? 0, 10, 20. 0 here represents the first shade that you're going to have. 10 represents the second shade, right? 20 represents the third, just like that. So this could also be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, down to 13 or down to 14, depending on the number of tones that you have here. So in this case, I have 13 tones. So if the number system here in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, in that pattern, it will be 1 to 13, all right? So take note of that. Now, if I hover on this, the actual tonal value is actually going to be displayed with that little tooltip label that I have at the top. So if I hover on this, you can see that at the top here, we have a value. If I click on this twice, you can see I have the ability to edit this value that I have here. If I hover on this and click on it twice, I have the ability to edit this value that I have here. Just like that for the other cases, right? But in this case, material design is letting us know that our first tone, our first shade here should have a tonal value of 0. Next one should have a tonal value of 10. Next should have a tonal value of 20. So over here, everything has already been done for you. The first one here has a tonal value of 0, as you can see. Once I hover on it, you can see that that particular tooltip there comes up with a tonal value of 0. The next one has a tonal value of 10.2, which is also approximately 10, which is fine. The next one has a tonal value of 20. The next one has 30. The next one has 40. The next one has 50. Now, this is supposed to have 10. I probably just made this little change while I was trying to click on it. So if I should take this out, for example, and then bring up that palette again, right? Go over to my plugins, click on this, and then wait for that plugin to actually get launched. And then click on new UI color palette again. Click on scale, which is fine. Come to custom, click on it. Over on Google, and then click on material design 3. Click on this. If I hover on this, you can now see that it has a tonal value of 10 at the top there. This has a tonal value of 20, 30, 40. So this has already been done for you by this plugin. So you don't have to change the tonal values anymore because it has already been customized, right, to actually fit into that of material design. The only thing that is missing here is that tonal value of 98, which we are going to get using a workaround. So we are going to work with this particular tonal palette that we have over here. So come down here and click on create UI color palette. As I click on it, a color palette is going to be created for my primary key color. Now you can see I have a color palette for my primary key color. So I'll hold this color palette, hold it and drag it and place it close to my primary key color that I have over here, right? Now the moment you create your color palette, by default, you'll be unable to actually select each of these tones that we have here because this particular layout is locked. So while you have it selected, come over to your layers panel. You are going to see that if you over on this region that says colors do not edit, you can see that we have it locked over here, right? You can see it says toggle layer locking. Right now it's actually locked. If I click on it, it becomes unlocked. Now I have the ability to actually select each of these tones that I have inside my tonal palette. Now, a tonal value of 0, as you can see, simply means that I'm going to have a completely black color like I have over here. You can see the code for a completely black color is 0 into 6 places, which is fine. Then a tonal value of 100 is supposed to be pure white. But over here, a tonal value of 100 here, you can see if I click on this, this is not pure white. So what you could do is change this to pure white, all right? So I could actually bring up the color picker and then change it to pure white, or just change the code to F into 6 places. Now I've actually changed that color to pure white, just like the way we saw in material design, where a tonal value of 100 should be pure white and a tonal value of 0 should be what? Pure black. So now I have my tonal palette for my key color sorted. So the next thing I'm going to do is, since I have tonal palette for the primary color sorted, I'm going to create the tonal palette for the next color there, which is the secondary color. Now for the tonal palette, the moment you create it, the first color you are going to be seeing here corresponds to the color for which you have created that tonal palette. Now since this is my primary key color, the first color here is going to be my source color, which is the same primary key color, alright? So that's for that in this particular case. Now I'm going to create a tonal palette for my secondary color. I'll come over here, select this. As I select it, then I'll bring up my plugin again, which is UI color palette, and try to create a tonal palette for my secondary key color. Now after creating the first tonal palette, inside this plugin right now, you will be unable to actually create another tonal palette unless you are using the pro version. So the only workaround you could use for that is delete whatever palette that you have here in that is acting like the history that I have here right now, right? So I'm going to delete any palette that I see here. So I'll come over here, click on this and click on delete palettes. If I click on delete palette, you can now see that I have the ability to now actually create another palette. So in this case now, I've selected my secondary key color, right? So I'll bring this here, I'll click on create or click on new UI color palette, click on that. Then go to scale, click on scale. Then come to this region that says custom, click on it. Over on Google and then go to material design 3, click on that. Now you have a palette for your secondary key color. Click on create UI color palette and automatically I have a UI color palette created for my secondary key color. Hold this, drag it, place it to your secondary key color, which is actually fine. Now the next thing you want to do is you want to unlock it as well, just like we did. So while you have it selected, come over here, click on that lock. Automatically you have it unlocked. Now you have the ability to select the tones inside this particular palette. Now what you want to do is, of course, a tonal value of 100 should be pure white. So come over here, select this and then make that pure white. I'll put in F into 6 places, which is the code for pure white, which is fine. Alright, and then the tonal value of 0 is pure black, and like I said that I have it as pure black here, which is fine. In the same way, we are going to have your first color here representing your source color, which will be the same as a secondary color in this case, right? So my tonal palette actually starts from this point that I have here. So I have 100, 99, 95, 90, 80, 70, 60, 50, down to a tonal value of 0, right? First color you have here is always the source color. So take note of that. So with that now, I have created my secondary key colors. Or better still, I've created a palette for my secondary key color. Now I'm going to create a tonal palette also for my tertiary key color. So quickly, I'll come over here, select this. Once I have it selected, bring up my UI color palette plugin. Automatically, I will no longer be able to create another palette until I delete whatever palette that I've created there before. So I'll come over here. You can see I cannot interact with this button that says new UI color palette. I have to delete this first. So click on this, delete this palette, right? So once I have that deleted, the button becomes activated. Now click on create, go to where it says scale, go to custom, over on Google, go to material design 3, select that. Now you have the tonal palette like the way we have it in material design. Come over here, click on create UI palette, and you've been able to create a tonal palette for your tertiary key color. So I'll hold this, quickly drag it here, which is fine. The next thing you want to do is unlock this and then select this tonal value of 100 and then change that to a pure white shade or a pure white color. I have something like this, which is fine, and I'm done with that color for my tertiary key color. In the same way, you are going to create a tonal palette for all the colors that you actually have here, including the error color, the success color, the warning color, so on and so forth. Let's just create one for the success color before we go into the gray region. All right, I'm going to come over here now for the error color. Well, let's create one for the error color. For the error color, I will select this and then click on my empty canvas, go to my plugin. Then once my plugin comes up, I'll delete whatever I had there before. All right, delete the previous palette that was there. All right, you see that we are repeating the same process over and over again for each of the key colors. Now click on create new, click on scale, which is fine. Click on custom, over on Google, go to material design 3, click on that, and then click on create UI palettes, and then you have a color palette actually created for your error color. Come over here, place it here close to the error key color. Next thing you want to do is unlock it, which is fine, and then go to that particular tonal value of 100, change that shade to a pure white color. I'll come over here, put in F into 6 places for the code, and then I have a pure white color. That's fine. Now I'm going to go offline and then create the tonal palette for the success color and also for the warning color. I have created the tonal palette for each of the key colors. Now we are left with the background or surface color. So we now have tonal palette for the success colors, as you can see. I will now have the tonal palette for the warning colors, which simply means that we now have the tonal palette for all the semantic colors and also for all the brand or identity colors. Now it is time for us to create tonal palette for the neutral key color and also neutral variant color. Now remember how we got the neutral key color and the neutral variant color, because if you get the neutral variant key color wrongly, what's going to happen is that you are going to create a tonal palette that will not be unified with your entire color system. Now, just as a quick recap, to get your neutral color, all you need to do is come back here, right? A very straightforward way to get your neutral color. Copy your primary color, whatever primary color that you're choosing, copy it, and then all you need to do to get your neutral color. Now we are having a quick recap, right? All you need to do to get your neutral color is change the saturation of this to 0, right? Come over here, change that saturation to 0. I have something like this. Then remember that we decided to use a mid tone, so put in a value of 50 so we can have equal distance for white and black, alright? And we decided to use this as our neutral color. Then after getting your neutral key color, to get your neutral variant color, make a copy of this, okay? But in this case, now remember that for your neutral key color, you did not put in any saturation, right? But for your neutral variant color, in this case, what you want to do is put in a saturation, but make sure that this particular region of the color picker is actually what is actually the same as that of a primary color. Pick a tint of the primary color. So I'm emphasizing this because if you decide to pick a tint of another color like red, your palette is going to be comprised of colors that are close to red. If you pick a tint of the primary color, your palette is going to be comprised of colors that are close to the primary color. So that you must do for your neutral key color. So in this case, I'm not going to be using this, or if I want to make a tint, I'm not going to make a tint of this color. Instead, I'm going to make a tint of my primary color and use that as my neutral color, right? So we have emphasized this over and over again. So now I'm going to remove this and I'm going to create a tonal palette for, first of all, my neutral key color, which has no saturation. So I'll select this quickly and then go to my plugin. Then once I launch the plugin, I'm going to put in, or I'm going to come up with my tonal palette for my neutral color. So I'll come over here, take the previous palette out of there, and then quickly click on this, go to where it says scale, click on it, go to custom, click on it, come over on Google, go to material 3, click on that, and then click on create UI color palette. Now, since this is actually your neutral color, what you are going to get is a palette or a grayscale palette, right? You can see that in this case we have a palette of neutral colors over here, right? So these are all neutral colors that we have inside this palette, because this is a neutral color. Now this is the only palette where, in this case, from this plugin, you are going to realize that your tonal value of 100 is going to be pure white. All right, let's actually come over here, unlock this, and if I select this, you can see that this has a pure white color, letting me know that indeed this color is actually a neutral gray. All right, letting me know that this is actually a perfect gray or a pure gray. That is why you can see that the tonal value here is already a pure color, or is already a white color. Now remember that for each of the other tonal palette that we created, we had to change this color here that has a tonal value of 100. We have to change it to white. But you can see that for the case of the neutral color, we don't actually have to change it. It comes as a white color, as a perfect white color, right? Because this is actually a neutral gray. So that confirms that this color is indeed a neutral gray. So take note of that. So after that, I want to create a tonal palette for my neutral variant key color. So I'll come over here, go to where it says UI color palette, click on that, and then come up with a tonal palette for my neutral variant key color. I'm going to remove the original tonal palettes that I had there and then try to create a new one. So I'll come over here, click on this, click on scale, click on custom, over on Google, go to material design 3, click on that and click on create UI color palette. Now in this case, I'm going to have a color palette that is filled up with cool grays. All right, so this gray was gotten from a blue palette, right? So for that reason, I'm going to have a color palette that is mixed with grays that actually have the presence of a blue color in them, and those are referred to as cool grays. Right? So I'm going to have a palette of cool grays. If you actually create a neutral variance key color that is mixed with red, in that case, we are going to have a palette of warm grays, because colors or a gray color mixed with red is referred to as a warm gray. That is why in coming up with your neutral variant key color, you need to make sure that it's made up of a tint of the primary color. So over here now, I have a palette of cool grays. So I'll come over here, bring this here, just like I did for the other palettes. Quickly, I'll unlock it and then change also this particular tonal value to pure white. Now you can see that in this case, it's not pure white, right? Because this is not a pure gray like we did for this particular neutral key color. So I'll change this to pure white. F into 6 places. Now I have something like that, right? So I have this as a pure white. Now we've completed the second stage of coming up with the color system, right? Completed the second stage of coming up with the color system. So we have the key colors. After the key colors, we have tonal palettes of each of the key colors, from the brand category to the semantic category to the background color category. All right, so we have this. Now after that, the next step is for you to actually assign roles to certain tones inside this particular tonal palette, because in your system design, you are not going to be using all the colors here to make your designs, right? So you are going to have certain colors, or you are going to select certain colors which you are going to be using in your system design. Now those colors are said to be given rows, and that's why over here we have color rows. Now each of those colors is going to have a set of roles that they are going to play. Now those roles are seen here in material design. You can see that we have color rules based on theme. So we have color rules for light theme, and also we have color rules for dark theme. And that is why over here in coming up with this color system, you can see that over here I have light theme, and over here I have what? I have dark theme. So the entire process that we'll be going through is actually generic for whether you are working with light theme or you are creating colors for dark theme. You have to first of all come up with your key colors like we've done, which is fine. And also you have to come up with your tonal palettes. Now, selecting your color rows will now depend on whether you are working with light theme or whether you are working with dark theme. Now, for your color rows, we have 4 major rows. We have a color that is going to play the primary role. We have a color that is going to play the unprimary role. We have a color that is going to play the primary continual role, and we have a color that is going to play the unprimary continual role. That's for your primary key color. After your primary key color, if you go over to the next key color, which is your secondary key color, we have a color that is going to play the secondary role. Just like we had a color playing the primary role here, we are going to have a color that will play the secondary role, because now you are now dealing with the secondary key color. We have a color that is going to play the unsecondary role. We have a color playing the secondary continual role, and also we have a color playing the unsecondary continual role. Now this is in unison with what we have here in material design, right? So those roles are the roles that are given here for material design. Now you can see that for lighting, we have the primary role, we have the primary role, we have the primary continual role, we have the primary continual role, right? For the secondary color, we have the secondary role, or secondary continual, or secondary continual. The same thing for the tertiary, the same thing for the error color for lighting. Now the same rules also apply for dark theme, just that they may have different tones. For dark theme, we equally have the primary, the unprimary, primary continual, unprimary continual, the same thing for secondary, the same thing for tertiary, and the same thing for the error colors or semantic color application. So the question you may want to ask at this point is, how do I know what particular tone should play the primary role? How do I know what particular tone should play the unprimary role? Just like that. Now, in order for us to do that, we are also going to reference the material design guide and use the material design guide to come up with those rules. So here in material design, you can see we have baseline color tokens. Now, if you are actually using material design for the first time, what you could do is just go over to your browser, type in material design 3. When that loads up, click on the first result that says material design 3, right? So when that loads up, come over to where it says styles, because of course your color system is a style, and then go to where it says color, click on this drop down. You are going to see where it says color schemes, right? Click on that, and then you see choosing a scheme. We have a static scheme, we have a dynamic scheme. Click on static, and then it's going to take you to this page. Here you have these color rules, right? So that's where we are right now. So it's taking us to this page where we have color rules for light theme and also color rules for what? For dark theme. So like I said, you want to know what would be tonal values that you are going to use whenever you are actually trying to come up with your primary role, your unprimary role, your primary container role, and your on-primary container role. So we are going to now reference materials design and come over to where it says baseline tokens. Under it, we have color schemes. Now, if I click on that drop down, of course, you can see the different palettes that we actually have based on the tonal palette that we've gotten from a tonal value of 0, 10, 20 down to 100, right? But right now we are not working with tonal palettes, or we are not working with palettes. So we are working with color schemes, which are the color rules. So this is now what we are working with. Now, under color schemes, you could decide to choose for light theme or dark theme. As you can see over here, we have light theme selected by default. So after coming up with the light theme colors, you could also decide to create color rules for dark theme. And that's why over here we have color rules playing light theme, and also we have color rules assigned to dark theme. So over here now we are going to be beginning with the light theme color rules. So by default it's set to light theme, which is fine. Then after that we equally have contrast values, right, or levels of contrast. Now for the levels of contrast, we have default or standard contrast, we have the high contrast, and then we have the medium contrast. That we are going to understand in a couple of minutes. Now by default it is set to the default or standard contrast once you actually come over here to color schemes, right? So in coming up with our colors, we have that light theme is selected, which simply means we are first of all coming up with colors for light theme, and we are coming up with those colors using the default or standard contrast level. So that's fine. So you can see that we have different rows here for the primary colors, secondary color, the tertiary colors, the error colors, the surface colors, the outline colors, and also we have some additional colors that will make you have a more robust color system referred to as add-ons. So since we are looking at coming up with color rules for our key colors, and we are starting with the primary color, we'll come over here, and first of all we are going to begin with color rules for the primary color. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on this, and automatically you can see we have 4 color rules here in material design for our primary color. So for these color rules, we have the primary role, the on-primary role, primary container role, and the primary container role. Just the way we have it over here, we have the primary role, the on-primary role, primary container role, and the on-primary container role. So how do I know what tone for my tonal palette is going to be playing the primary role? To do that, we are going to go to material design, and then we are going to click on this first layer that we have that says primary, right? Click on it, and then you can see that we have the color tokens over here, right? Now you can see that over here it says MD. MD is referring to material design. Then it's letting me know that there's a reference color style. Like the reference here simply refers to this entire tonal palette that you have, right? That's what the reference means. This entire tonal palette that you have. That's what the reference there means. But it refers to the tonal palette created by material design, because material design is using a different primary color from you. Now this is the primary color. You can see the shade of color that is used here for material design. But in our own case here, we have our own primary color, right? So take note of that. So I have MD RAF representing the reference tonal palette of material design. Now, what palette are they talking about? They're talking about the primary palette, and you can see it over here. Now, material design is letting you know that if you want to choose the color or tone that will play the primary role, go to the primary palette and pick a color that has a tonal value of 40, and that's why you can see primary 40 over here. Now, that primary 40 in this case for material design has this as its code, right? But for our own case now, we are using a different palette for material design. So for that reason, we are only going to be using the tonal value. So the color that is going to play the primary role has a tonal value of 40. So I'll come over here. I'll select, or I'll go to the palette of the primary key color and pick a tonal value of 40 and use that to play the primary role. So I'll come over here. I have 0, 10, 20, 30, 40. I'll select this, right? And then I'll copy it. And I'll come over to where I have my primary role, and I'll paste that particular color there, or that particular tone there, and that is going to be acting as our primary color, or that will be the shade that will play the primary role in this particular case. All right, so take note of that. So I have this as our primary shade playing the primary role. So just the way it is in material design. So first of all, let's collapse that. Let's go to the next one, which is for my secondary colors. As I click on it, click on secondary. Material design is letting us know that if I want to pick a color to play this next role for this key color, which is the secondary key color, if I want to pick a color to play the secondary role, I should also pick a color that has a tonal value of 40. And that's why you can see secondary 40, which simply means that from the secondary palette, pick the color that has a tonal value of 40. So I'll come over here. For my secondary palette, I'll also go pick a color that has a tonal value of 40. So I'll copy this as well. And that's going to be playing the secondary role. So I'll come over here, paste it here. And that will be playing my secondary role. Now the same thing for my tertiary role. I'll come over here, pick the color that has a tonal value of 40. Right? I'll come over here, select this, copy it. You can check that later in Material Designer. You see that even the tertiary has a tonal value of 40 to play the tertiary role. So I'll come over here, paste it here, and then I have the shade of color or the tone of color that is going to be playing the tertiary role. Now the same thing happens for my semantic colors, which is my error color, my success color, and my warning color. Alright, in this case. Now you can see that Material Design is letting us know that after you've come up with your tonal palette, the color that is going to play the primary role should have a tonal value of 40. The color that will play the secondary role should have a tonal value of 40. The color that will play the tertiary role should have a tonal value of 40. The color that will play the error role should have a tonal value of 40. The color that will play the success role should have a tonal value of 40, right? But remember that these colors will later be used as, in this case, this will be used as the primary color, this will be used as a secondary color, this will be used as a tertiary color. We have already created colors that we want to use for our primary color, our secondary color, and our tertiary color, and we have them here as our key colors, right? So for that reason, for this case, we are not going to be following the Material Design Guide. Like I said, it's a guide, right? So we are not going to be following the Material Design Guide in choosing colors that will play the primary, secondary, or tertiary, or any of the key roles that we have here. Because if you're actually designing for a brand, that brand already has a brand color, right? Which we came up with here as key colors. So you don't want to pick the brand color of a brand from a reference palette or from a tonal palette, because if you do that, you've already changed the brand color of that particular brand. So for that reason, all the colors that will play in the key roles, like our primary role, our secondary, our tertiary, will be the default key colors. And that's why for our primary role, you can see over here close to it, it is written default, which simply means select the default color as a primary role. For secondary, select the default color as a secondary. For tertiary, select the default color as your tertiary role. What I'm going to do is I'll come over here. For my primary role, I'll simply select my primary key color. I'll come over here, copy this. I'll copy it, and then I'm going to paste it here and use that as my primary role. Alright, so I'll paste it here, paste to replace. Now I have this as my primary role, which is fine. I'll come over here for my secondary, I'll do the same thing. I'll copy it, and then come over here, paste it here, and use that as my secondary role. So I'll select this and then paste it here as my secondary role, which is fine. The same thing for my tertiary and every other key color. So my tertiary, I'll come over here, select this, copy it. Come over here, paste it here quickly. Now I have that. For my error, the same thing. I'll come over here, copy it. Then select it, paste it here. I have this. The same thing for all my semantic colors. Success, the same thing. Come over here, I will copy this. And then I'll paste it here. That's fine. And then for my warning color, I'll also come over here, copy it. And then paste it there. Which is fine. So that way I have all my key rows done, right? I have my primary row, secondary row, down to my semantic or warning role in this particular case. Now you are going to do that for your brand colors and for your semantic colors. Now you could decide that for your semantic colors, right, you could decide to use, or you could decide to actually pick that particular shade to play the error role, or to play the success role, or to play the warning role in that particular case, which simply means that I could decide or you could decide to pick a tone of 40 to play the error, a tone of 40 to play the success, and a tone of 40 to play the warning role if you want to. However, for your brand colors, what is going to play the primary, secondary, and tertiary role should be exactly the same as those of your key colors, because these three colors make up the brand colors of your products, right? They are the colors that give your products its identity, so you don't want to pick them from a palette. So you could decide to just take all your key colors, right, from the brand and semantic colors, and then use them to actually play the main roles, just like we have here. Or if you actually want to follow the guide, which is the material design guide, you could decide to then put in your key colors for your brand or identity colors. But when you get to, let's say, your semantic colors, you could decide to actually pick them from these particular tonal palettes that you have here, and you are fine. Or you could do it the way I've done it now and just select all your key colors here and just use them to replace the main colors that you have over here, and then you are fine. Know fully well that your brand colors must be the same thing as the key colors that you have here, because you don't want them to change. Like I said, these are your identity colors, right? So that's for that. So now we've come up with our primary, secondary, tertiary, down to the color that is going to play the warning role, right? So that's fine. So now we are going to go back to material design and take each of these rows one after the other. So now I'm going to collapse this and go back to the main primary color. So I will expand this now. Under primary, I'll select the first one. We now know what particular tone is going to be playing the primary role. We've done that. Now the primary role, we have the next row here, which is the primary role. Click on it. But to click on it, it's letting me know that the tone that is going to play the primary role for my palette is that which has a tonal value of 100, right? So since I'm dealing with the primary colors, I will go to the palette of my primary key color and pick a tone, or pick the tone that is primary 100, or the tone that has a value of 100. So I'll come over here now for my palette and then go over here, look for the tone that has a value of 100, which is this, and use that as my primary role, right? So that's going to be my primary role. So you can come over here, paste to replace, so that you can have it there, right? So now I have my primary role, which is fine. I have this. Now after that, the next role there is the primary container role. Okay, so I'll come back here to material design. I'll click on this, and it's letting me know that what is going to play my primary container role is that color with a tonal value of what? Of 90. As you can see, primary 90. So I'll go back to the primary palette and then pick that color with a tonal value of 90. So I'll come over here, I'll select this, copy it, and use this as my primary container role. I'll come over here and then paste it here. That's going to be playing my primary container role. And then I also have the primary container role. So I'll come back to material design and then click on the last row that I have there, which is the primary container. Material design is letting me know that I should pick that with a tonal value of 30 to play my primary container role. So I'll come back here from this same palette. Since I'm still dealing with the primary palette, I'll pick any color here with a tonal value of 30. So this is the color with a tonal value of 30, as you can see. So I'll select this, copy it, and then use that as my primary container row. I'll come over here and then paste it here. Now I have this as my primary container row. So with that, now I have these 4 rows for my primary color sorted. I now know what's going to play the primary role, and I know what's going to play the primary role, the primary container role, and the primary container role. And that is why I have their tonal values written very close to them. Now for my primary role, automatically I'm using my default key color, right? So I just copied my key color, which I already got, and then replaced it there, which is fine. For my primary role, pick a tonal value of 100 for the palette and use that as your primary role. For the primary container role, pick the color that has a tonal value of 90, and that's why we have 90 here. Then that's for the primary container role. Then for the primary container role, pick a color that has a tonal value of 30, and that's why we have 30 over here. So with that, I am done with the color rules for my primary key color. Now after that, I'm going to collapse this section and then go to my secondary color. So I'll click on this, and now you see that I also have 4 rows here. So if I click on this, it's letting me know that the color that is going to play the secondary row should have a tonal value of 40. But we already have that sorted, right? Because we already have our secondary color So and we are using the default secondary color, which is fine. Now let's look at the next rule. Therefore, the secondary rule letting me know that the color that will play this role should have a tonal value of 100. So I'll come over here. Make sure that this has a tonal value of 100. And from the palette, we are going to realize that the value that has, or the color that has a tonal value of 100 is pure white. So 100 simply means pure white. So I already have pure white here, right? Because this particular frame which I used already had a pure white color. So automatically, this is going to be my secondary color, which is fine. Now for my secondary container color, it's letting me know that I should pick a color from the tonal palette that has a tonal value of 90. Alright, so I'll come back now to my secondary tonal palette and pick a color that has a tonal value of 90. So I'll come over here. Quickly, I'm going to copy this. You can see this has a tonal value of 90. And then that's going to play my secondary container row. Now I have that sorted. So the next thing I'm going to look at is the on-secondary container row. So if I come back to material design, if I click on the on-secondary container, it's letting me know that I should pick a color with a tonal value of 30. So I'll come back here to this palette for the secondary color and look for any particular color with a tonal value of 30, right? So I'll come back here, let this, copy it, and then use that as my on-secondary container row. I'm going to paste it here. Now I have all my rows for my secondary colors sorted. Now you can see that we have the same tonal values for these colors for the primary and secondary row, right? Aside from the very first colors, which are the default key colors, you can see that the primary row has a tonal value of 100, right? What we reference material design. Now for the secondary color, the secondary has a tonal value of 100. My primary color, the primary container has a tonal value of 90. For my secondary, the secondary container has a tonal value of 90 as well. Then the on-primary container for my primary color has a tonal value of 30. The same thing for my on-secondary container, it has a tonal value of 30. So this will be the same for all these key colors down to the semantic rows, alright? So the on-primary will be 100 in tonal value. Similarly, on secondary will be 100, on tertiary will be 100, then on error color will be 100, right? The on success color will be 100, just like that. Then the same thing happens for primary container row that has a tonal value of 90. Secondary container row also have a tonal value of 90, right? The tertiary 90, the error container row 90, the success container 90. You can check material design and also try to confirm that down to the semantic colors. So the same thing is going to happen for all these colors down to the warning color that we have here. So let's do that for one of the colors, after which we are going to create for the rest of them offline. So I'm going to come over here and try to bring up colors for my tertiary role. So for my tertiary role, I already have the default color, which is fine. So my tertiary role is going to have a tonal value of 100, which is pure white. All right, this is pure white here, that's fine. Then my tertiary container role is going to have a tonal value of 90. So I'll come to my tertiary palette and take the color with a tonal value of 90. I'm going to copy this now and then paste to replace over here. Now I have that. Then for my tertiary container role, it has a tonal value of 30. So I'll come back to this particular tonal palette and pick a tonal value of 30 for my tertiary container role. Now I have this, which is fine. So I now have all my rows for the tertiary key color, which are tertiary role, tertiary container, and tertiary container role. Now I'm going to go offline and create rules for the error color. I'll go offline and create rules for the success color, and then go offline as well and create rules for the warning color. So now I have created all the rules for my brand colors and my semantic colors. So you can see that for my primary key color, these are the color rules. For my secondary key color, these are the color rules. For my tertiary key color, these are the color rules. For my error key color, success key color, and to my warning key color, these are color rules, right? So exactly the way we have it here in material design: primary, secondary, tertiary, and our error colors. Now the next thing I want to do is I want to create color rules for our neutral colors. Now our neutral color has two palettes that look alike in this case, right? So we have neutral key color and we have the neutral variant key color. So we have two palettes here. Now you can see that this palette over here has more presence of blue in it, right? Unlike this here that has or lacks chroma or lacks the presence of an actual saturation, right? So this palette is definitely different from this palette that I have over here. So how do we create the rules for this particular palette? We go to material design. We are done with creating the primary rows, the secondary, tertiary, error rows, right? Now we are going to create what is referred to as surface colors. Now over here, you should know that your neutral color is equally referred to as a surface color because this is where you get rules that will be used for the background of most of your designs, right? You get them from the neutral palette or from the neutral color. So what we are going to do is come over to material design. Once you see surface colors, they're talking about colors like your neutral color, right? So that's what I mean by surface colors. Now, if I should click on this drop down, aside from your neutral color, your neutral variant colors, some of their tones here could also be used as surface colors, as you can see, and that's why they actually look very similar or close to each other here. So if I come over here and click on surface colors, I have all the surface rules that I'm going to use for my design here. Now if I come over here and click on the first one there, it says or tells me that the color that should be playing the surface rule should have a tonal value of 98. But if you look over here, you can see that I have md.ref.palette.neutral, then I have 98, which simply means that this is the this is the neutral palette. Alright. If I should select this other rule, which is in this case on surface variant, for the token that I have here, it says md.ref.palette.neutral variant 30, which simply means that this particular tonal value will be gotten from the neutral variant palette. So take note of the token name so that you can differentiate colors or rules that you are getting from the neutral palette from those that you are getting from the neutral variant palette. So that's for that. If I come over here and click on this, it's letting me know that I'm going to have a surface rule, and that surface rule is going to be coming from the neutral palette, right? And it's going to have a value or a tonal value of 98. So I'll come back to the neutral palette, which is this, and then I am going to have a surface rule. Now, a surface rule is also the same as a background rule, and it's going to have a tonal value of 98 like we saw. But if you check our palettes, our tonal palettes, you get to realize that we have tonal values 90, 95, 99 down to 100, but we don't have a tonal value of 98 here because that was not actually available as arranged in the plugin. So you could decide to actually go back to that plugin and get a tonal value of 98, or you quickly use a workaround. Now, since 99 is very close to 98, right? For the color role of 98, you could actually place this particular value or tonal value of 99 there and you are fine because they are very close to each other. However, if you actually want to put in that value of 98, now what you could do is you will take note of the fact that for this particular neutral palette that we have, if this particular color has a tonal value of 100, it's very likely that its brightness value will also be 100. So if I come over here and check for its brightness value, you can see the brightness value is 100, whereas the hue and saturation are 0. Fine. If I should check this other color here, if this particular palette has a tonal value of 99, it's very likely also that its brightness value will be 99. If I come over here, you can see that its brightness value over here is equally what? Is equally 99, as you can see here. So let's check for the next color there and let's see what we have. So if I come over here, if this particular color here has a tonal value of 95 for this particular neutral palette, it's very likely that its brightness value will equally be 95. So you can see that the brightness value is 95. So for these particular neutral palettes, like for these neutral color palettes, right? For this particular neutral palette, the tonal values correspond to the brightness values because we have most other properties like the saturation being 0 and then the hue value being 0. So the property that usually changes or tweaks more often than not is the brightness value. So if I need a tonal value of 98 and I don't have it in my palette, all I need to do is come over to whatever I have here. You can pick any one here, right? You can pick any of these particular tones that you have here. In my case, I want to assume that I've picked pure white, or you can pick this that is 99, or you can pick this that is 98, 95, or 90. Pick any of them and then come over here, right? This should have a tonal value of 98. So just bring up the color picker in this case and change the brightness value to 98 for this particular neutral tonal palette. And automatically I have what? I have a tonal value of 98 sorted, right? So I don't really need to go back to that particular palette generator to get that done. But if you actually want to be very sure, what you could do is I could decide to make a copy of this, which is fine, and my neutral color, and then go back to generator, come over here, go to plugins, go to UI color palette, click on that. And in this case, I want to just bring up a color with a tonal value of 98, right? So I will delete any previous palette that I had. Let's delete this. And let's see if that workaround that we use is actually a decent one. So I'll come over to where it says skill. I'll click on that. Now, in this case, I just want to create a palette of 2 tones. So I'm going to remove all these tones and then give this a value of 98. Since I need a tonal value of 98 for one of the colors, I'll make this 98. I'll click on enter, which is fine. Now you can place this anywhere. I'll just place it at the end and I'll click on create UI color palette. So I'll click on this and it creates a palette of just 2 colors for me, right? So with this palette that it has created, I'll come over here, quickly unlock it and then select this particular color that I gave a tonal value of 98 and check for its brightness. You can see that the brightness is actually 98, which simply means that we are correct to just pick any particular value from that tonal palette and give it a brightness of 98 and use it as a tonal value of 98. So that's fine for my surface or background color, and I have that sorted. So after that, for the surface color, other surface rows that we have here include the unsurface color or the unsurface row. So if I click on it, it says that we have a row called the unsurface row, right? And it's also from the neutral palette. So it's letting me know that the color that is going to play the surface row should have a tonal value of 10. You can see it says neutral 10, which simply means a tonal value of 10 from the neutral palette. So I'll come over here, right? This is the surface. Now the unsurface is this. It should have a tonal value of 10. So I'll come over here, select this, copy this color with a tonal value of 10, and then paste to replace here. And that's fine. So you can see I have that sorted. So after that, let's look at other surface rules that we have here in material design. So we are done with the surface rule and the unsurface rule. Now the next rule there is referred to as surface variant. So let me click on it. Now when I click on surface variant, if I check the token, I can see that this color is gotten from the neutral variant palette. And that's why you can see over here it says neutral variant. So in this case, it will not be part of my neutral rules. It's going to be part of my neutral variant rules. So over here I have my surface variant, just the way I have it here, surface variant, right? So it says that from the neutral variant palette, pick a color with a tonal value of 90. So I'll come over here and pick a color with a tonal value of 90. I have that in my palette, so I'll quickly come here and just pick this color and use that as my surface variant. So we are going to try to get the other rows as quickly as possible as we proceed right now. So after that, we have on surface variant, which is what is going to be on this surface, right? Click on it. It's letting me know that I should go to the neutral variant palette and pick a tonal value of 30. So I'll come back here. For the on surface, pick a tonal value of 30. So I'll come to the neutral variant and then pick a tonal value of 30, which is fine. Then I'll select it and place it there. That's fine. Now after that, I have other surface rules here. I have what is referred to as surface container IS, just like that. But before we continue with the rules, let's see the uses of these rows that we are actually creating. Now, what are their functions? Now, let's say I create a simple button, right? I'll come over here, click on the text tool, click on the empty canvas and type in, let's say, fill button. Which is fine. And then put this inside an auto layer by clicking on Shift A. That's fine. And let's give this a padding of 16 pixels horizontally and a padding of 16 pixels vertically. So I have something like this. Let's align this completely to the center. It's already aligned to the center, and that's fine. So I have this as my button. Let's give this button a color mapping. Let's give it a fill color. And that's fine. Now you can see that after giving it a fill color, I can no longer see the text. For purpose of contrast, I'm going to make that text black so that I can see it on this background. And then I'm going to select this button and I'm going to scale it to make it bigger. Now I have something like this as my button. Let's reduce the size of this a bit till we have something like this, and that's fine. So let's say I have this as my button. Let me make a copy of this button and place it here. So let's say I'm trying to design a button and I'm trying to use these color rules, right? Now in this case now, I'm going to make the background color or give the background color my primary rule. So I will extend this button and give this button my primary rule. Because now material design is letting me know that if I'm to have an accessible color combination, I should use colors that are actually contrasting and that I picked from the tonal palette with these particular tonal values. So let's say I want to apply my primary rule to this particular button. In this case, I have the button created. For the fill color, I'm going to change that to that of the primary rule, which is this. So I have this over there, which is fine. And then the color of the text that is going to be placed on it will now take the color of the on-primary, and that's why this is called on-primary, right? So now you can now see that I've applied my primary container to this particular button, to the auto layout of the button, and then what's going to be staying on the button is going to have a color. So what is staying on top is going to have the on-primary rule because it is staying on top of the primary. So in this case, I'm going to change this color to that of the on-primary color, and I'm going to have something like this. Let me select the entire text there and then give it the on-primary color, and I have something like this. Now you can see that we have a very good looking button with an accessible combination, right? We don't have any issues with contrast. You can see that this can easily be read, right? So there's no issue with contrast when we actually make a design using this combination of primary and non-primary colors. So these are the uses of these rows that you are actually bringing up. Now you can see how accessible this particular design is looking. If I should take a copy of this and then bring it down here and decide that I want to try also for the primary container and your primary container row, I'm going to give this particular auto layout of the button, which is the container, I'm going to give it the container row. So I'll select it, and in this case I want to give it this container row, which is fine. And you can see that by giving it the container row, it's not looking very well with this particular white text that I have here, right? This is not very accessible. Contrast difference is not so good. So the only way you can make the contrast difference look very good is to actually change what is on top of the primary container, which is change the color that is on top of the primary container, change it to the on-primary container row. So I'll come over here. This is the text now on top of the primary container. So I will select it and change that to the on-primary container row. And then you can see that these two color combinations are actually looking very good together, and we have a more accessible button, right? A more or a better combination of text and a background that is looking really accessible with a very good or decent difference in contrast. All right, so just take note of that. I can see that the contrast in this case is better than what we had where this particular text was actually white. So these are the uses of these colors that you are coming up with. All right, now if you decide to mix it up randomly, for example, there are times where you may want to actually flip the contrast, because now we have a button here created by the primary container and the primary container, which is fine. We have another button here created by the primary color and the primary color, which is also looking fine. And now let's assume that I want to flip the contrast. Let's see what we are going to have. Let's assume that I want to have something like this. Let me take this and bring it here. I'll take this button now. I'll bring it here. All right. And then I'll take this button. I'll bring it here. Now this is an application of the primary rule and your primary rule. Now you can see how it is looking very decent and very okay. Now this is an application of the primary container rule and the on-primary container rule. And you see how decent it is looking. Now for the fact that we have a color that plays on primary and on primary container, it simply means that those colors should be what should be used for things like text or icons that is placed on top of the primary role or the primary container role, as the case may be, just the way we have it here. All right. Now, if you decide to flip the contrast, there are times where you may end up with also a decent combination, or there are times where you may end up with a bad combination. Now, what do I mean by flipping the contrast? Flipping the contrast simply means instead of having this on primary role on top of it, I want to change your primary role to the color of the container. Then I want to change or interchange the container color with that of the text. So to do that in practice, I'll simply bring this here. All right. And now I'm going to change the color of the background to the color of the text. In this case, that's pure white. And then change the color of the text to the color of the background. This is just me interchanging them, and that's flipping the contrast. Now I have something like this, right? Now you can see that in this case, this is still looking good, right? This is still looking fine. This is still very accessible, and this is fine. Now let's try to flip the contrast for the container and the on-container rows. I'll come over here, select the background, give it that of text color. So let me copy the text color and then give it to the background. And then let me collect or copy the background color and give it to the text. Now I have something like this, right? Now you can see that this is still looking okay, right? So there are times where flipping the contrast works fine and works perfectly well. There are times where it doesn't give you a good enough contrast. So anytime you are flipping the contrast, you should have the ability to tell if what you are getting or the combination you are getting is actually accessible or has a good enough contrast. So that's what I mean by the primary role, or the color plane the primary role, color plane the on-primary, color plane the primary container, and the color plane the on-primary container. So we are going to go back to those surface colors and try to actually complete them. So we are done with the surface role, the on-surface role, which is fine. We are also done with the surface variance role and the surface variance role. So let's look at other roles that we have there as part of our surface roles. Now click on success colors and we have the surface rule sorted, we have the on surface rule sorted, we have the surface variant rule sorted, and we have the on surface variant rule sorted, which are these four that we've actually replaced over here. We have 1, 2, 3, and 4. Now we have, aside from that, we have a group of container rules that gives you the ability to have different background colors that you could actually nest. So we have the surface container high rule, we have the surface container rule, we have surface container low, we have surface container lowest, and we'll equally have inverse and inverse on surface. So quickly I'll click on this. We have surface container highest. Now it says that I should go to tonal palette, which is the neutral tonal palette, and pick a tonal value of 90. So I'll go to the neutral tonal palette, which is this, and I'll pick a tonal value of 90. I'll come over here, pick a tonal value of 90, which is fine, and then use that as surface container highest rule. So I'll come over here, where it says surface container highest. I'll come over here, click on this, and then paste to replace very quickly. Then I have something like this. Now in the same way, the values or tonal values of all the other rows that we have there are actually displayed here. So quickly we are going to get the tonal values and replace each and every one of them the way I have them here. So I have surface container highest, surface container high, surface container low, surface container lowest, just the way I have them here in material design, right? So I have that this has a tonal value of 92, but you can see that from my tonal palette I do not have any shade here or any tone that has a tonal value of 92. So what can you do now? Since this is also the neutral gray palette, all I could do is just go over to this pure white color and change the brightness to, let's say, 92, just the way we did for the tonal value of 98 that we did not have inside the tonal palette. So I'll come over here, change this to 92, and that's fine. All right, so you see that's fine. Now this has the tonal value of 94. I also do not have that as part of my tonal palette, so I'll come over and select this, just change this to 94 quickly, and that's fine. Right, now this has a tonal value of 100, which is pure white, that's fine. this adds a tonal value of 96. I also do not have that in my tonal palette, so I'll come here quickly and change this to 96, and that's fine. Quickly, I've been able to create all the surface container rows that I'm going to need to have a variation or different gray backgrounds. Alright, these are some of the applications or functions of the surface container row. Now after that, we have, let's say if we have other rows here. I have the surface container high here, surface container high, surface container low. Right, I have surface container lowest. All these are sorted. We equally have what is referred to as an inverse color. Now for the inverse surface, it says that I should go to the neutral palette and pick a color that has a tonal value of 20. It says neutral 20, so I'll go to the neutral palette and then pick a color that has a tonal value of 20. So I'll come over here, select this, and then that's going to be for my inverse surface color. So I'll come over here, I have inverse surface here, paste it here, and I have that for the inverse surface. After that, I have another row which is inverse on surface. If I click on it, it says neutral 95. Alright, so pick a tonal value of 95 from the neutral palette. So I'll come over here, go to where it says, okay, where it has a tonal value of 95, copy that, and then that was going to be for inverse on surface. I'll paste to replace it. Now I have something like this, which is fine. Then after that, I have a surface tint color, and over here I also have a surface tint color. So let's click on it. Once I click on it, you can see that there's this error warning message, right, which probably indicates that this is actually a deprecated token, so we're not going to be using this, right? If I click on this as well, there's also this error message probably indicating that this is also a deprecated token, which simply means the token that is fading out are no longer being used. So I won't actually go for this at this point. So we are done with our surface colors, and then I will collapse this. After our surface colors, we have another row here referred to as outline colors. So I'll click on this and let's see what the outline colors are. If I click on outline, I can see neutral variance 50, right? So I will go to the neutral variant palette and take a tonal value of 50 to act as my outline color. So I'll come over here, select this, I'll copy that, and then use that as my outline color. So I'll come over here, paste to replace, which is fine. Now I have that. So after that, the next row, there's the outline variant row. I'll click on it. It says neutral variance 80. So I'll come over here. For my neutral variance palette, I will go and select that with the tonal value of 80. I'll copy this. Come over here. That's for outline variance. That's fine. Now I have something like this. So with that, now I'm done with the rows for the outline colors. So if I should go back to Figma, you are going to see that I am done with the main rows that I have here. Now have in mind that there's a faster way to go about coming up with this entire color system, both for light theme and dark theme. But the reason why we are taking this route is so that you understand how to actually generate this entire color from the ground up, right? From key colors to tonal palette to color rows and any other rows that we are going to have. So that's way, the moment we start using the shortcut, which is actually using a plugin to generate all the colors here, you'll be able to work with the colors, and then you understand the functions of each of the rows that you have in the color system. So at this point, we have our main row sorted. We have the main color row sorted for each of these key colors that we have here in our design. You can see that we have a lot of surface colors over here, right? We have surface container colors, and then we also have other colors for the neutral variance category. Now if I come back to material design, I'm done with the rows for the primary colors, I'm done with the rows for the secondary colors, I'm done with the rows for the tertiary, for the arrow, for the surface, and for the outline colors. I can see that I have another category of color rows here, which I refer to as add-ons. Now these add-ons are just like additional color rows that you apply to your color system so that you have a more robust color system, right? Especially if you are designing for light theme and dark theme, you want to have as many color or as many usable color rows as possible. So that's why material design is actually giving us some more color rows that we could add to our color system to have a robust color system. So let's check what we have under the add-on rows. Now for the add-ons, we have some colors for primary, secondary, tertiary, and surface colors. So we have add-on primary colors, add-on secondary colors, add-on tertiary, and add-on surface. So quickly, we are going to check for each of them. I'll click on this. I have primary fix. If I click on that, now remember that this is for the primary colors. If I click on that, it says this has a tonal value of 90. You can see primary 90. So I'll come over here. For the add-ons which I have in this category, you can see this has a tonal value of 90. Of course, I've written all the tonal values here. The next has a tonal value of 10, 80, and then 30, just the way I have it here in material design. Alright. So I've written all the tonal values there in Figma, so you can come over here and check them out. But in our case, we are just going to be putting in the values over here. So over here, I have a tonal value of 90. You come to your tonal palette and then pick a tonal value of 90. So I'll come over here quickly. I'll click on this, copy it, and then paste to replace, and then I'll place it here. So I have that sorted. So I'm going to go offline and create these add-on colors for our primary color, our secondary color, our tertiary color, and also create the add-on colors for our neutral colors. But before I go offline, let us create the add-on colors for one of them first. So we are going to create for just the primary color, and then I'll go offline and create for secondary and tertiary. So I have this for the primary fixed color. Then I have another add-on color which is on primary fixed. It has a tonal value of 10. So I'll come over here and select this color with a tonal value of 10. Copy it and then come over here, paste to replace. I have that sorted. I have another add-on color referred to as the primary fixed dim. It has a tonal value of 80. So quickly I'll come over here, look for color that has a tonal value of 80. So I'll come over here, select this, copy that, and then paste to replace over here. I have that sorted. And then I have another add-on color that is referred to as the on primary fixed dim, and it has a tonal value of 30. So I'll come over here and look for tonal value with 30. So I'll copy this and then come back here, paste to replace. Now I have this. Now in the same way, this is 90, 10, 80, 30. The same way for secondary, 90, 10, 80, 30. The same thing for tertiary, 90, 10, 80, 30. Now the add-on colors here that are recommended in material design are just for the brand colors, which are primary, secondary, and tertiary. So we don't have add-ons for semantic colors. So you can see primary, secondary, and tertiary colors, and a few for the surface colors. So no add-on colors for your semantic colors, just for primary, secondary, and tertiary, and a few for the surface surface colors. So since the surface colors are just 3, let's look at the add-on colors for those surface colors. So we have, for the add-on colors, over here I have a background color, right? I can see that my background color is that with a tonal value of 98. It says neutral 98. But I think we've already come up with a tonal value for that, right? We already have that here as a background color. So for that reason, we're not going to be repeating that. And for the background color, it has a tonal value of 10. If I come over here, we have already gotten that, right? So we're not going to be repeating that. After that, we have color for surface bright. It has a tonal value of 98. Of course, we already have that as a background color. So to avoid repetition, we're not going to be using that. We have the surface dim color. It has a tonal value of 87 from the neutral palette. So I don't have that in my tonal palette. So I'll come over here for surface dim. That's a tonal value of 87. Remember that this is the neutral color, so you can come over to the color picker and just change that brightness value to 87 and you're fine. Instead of using that UI plugin again and wasting all the time. This is a faster way to do that. Then over here we have rules for screen and shadow, the tonal value of 0 in each case. So over here, I'll just come over here, select this color that has a tonal value of 0, which is complete black, and then use that to replace for this for screen and also for shadow, right? So now I'm going to go offline. Just where I created the add-on colors for the primary section, I'm going to create add-on colors for secondary, and I'm also going to create add-on colors for the tertiary colors. So at this point, I have created all my color rules, both the main color rules and the additional color rules, which are referred to as add-ons. Now, it is important for you to understand that these color rules are actually for a standard contrast. Because if I come here in material design, there are also other levels of contrast aside from the default or standard contrast. we have the medium contrast, and we have the high contrast that as we can see here, right? So the color rules for medium contrast will be different from the color rules for the high contrast. Now the most important thing is just the difference in tones that creates an accessible combination, right? Because when a color has a very low tonal value, it's very close to black. So the tones simply refer to how close to black or white a color is. A color with a very low tone, very close to black. If a color with a very high tone is very close to white. So when you are actually combining these colors, what material design is trying to say is try to combine colors that are actually close to white and colors that are close to black. That way you have more contrast. And that's why you can see that if you check for primary container and non-primary container, you can see this has a tonal value of 90. This has a tonal value of 30. So tonal difference is about 60, right? So a tonal value of 90, as you can see over here, is very close to white, right? You can see a tonal value of 90 is close to white. Then a tonal value of 30 in this case is close to black, right? So they are picking a value that is close to black, and they are picking a value that is close to white. So that's just the idea with picking these particular rows that you have here. Now, if I come back to material design, for this particular default contrast or standard contrast that I have, to check for the primary color and the unprimary color, you can see that for the primary color over here, say it should have a tonal value of 40, right? The unprimary color should have a tonal value of 100. So that's a difference of about 60. If I decide to actually change this to a very high contrast, we are going to realize that I'm going to have a greater tonal difference between the two values. So if I change this to high contrast and I come over here, you can see that material design is letting me know that for a very high contrast, the primary color should have a tonal value of 20. Your primary color should have a tonal value of 100. That's a tonal value of 80 in this case. You can see that the tonal difference for standard was 60, but for high contrast is now 80, right? So that is just it for coming up with these tonal values. So now that we are done with coming up with the rows for lighting, we are also going to create rows for dark theme, right? And you can see that over here we have light theme rows, right? You can see light theme is selected over here. If I click on this, I can also select dark theme rows. And dark theme rows are different from light theme rows because for dark theme rows, in this case, the primary color here has a tonal value of 80. But for light theme, the primary color has a tonal value of 40. So in order for us to actually save our time, because there's a faster way, like I said, to do all what we have here. So in order for us to save our time, we are going to see how to actually come up with these colors, like the faster way to actually come up with these colors that I have here. And in order for us to do that, I'm going to go now to a new design file. So in my case, I am quickly going to open Figma in a new tab. So I'll come over here and then open a new design file. And then I want to actually get my color system as quickly as I can. So for that reason, I'm going to be using a plugin referred to as the Material Theme Builder plugin. So I'll come over here, click on this icon, then go to where it says plugins and widgets, click on it. And then in the search field, I'll type in Material Theme Builder. So Material Theme Builder. Now I have this plugin here, so I'll click on it. And the moment I click on it, I have the plugin come up here, right? Now you could decide to actually, because it gives you options to generate and update text styles. So if you want text styles to be created in addition to your color styles or in addition to your color system, you can leave these checked. In my case, I'm going to uncheck it. I don't want text styles in my own case because of course we've treated how to come up with a typography system already. So if you already have a typography system, you don't want text styles because it's going to generate those text styles that are actually in material design. Then over here it says generate state layers. If you are going to need state layers, of course you can keep this checked. But for my own case, I just want to generate a color system. If I need the state layers later, I can always go to the settings and add state layers. So now that I have unchecked these two boxes in my own case, I will then click on create theme here. So I will click on that. And once I click on that, automatically you can see that there's a tooltip that comes up that says updating scheme. Alright, so it's already putting in a color system. Now what color system is it putting in? Now remember that material design actually has a default color with which they were actually explaining or illustrating the color system, right? They have their own default color over here, and you are going to find out that we have that default color in this particular plugin, right? Or we have other default colors in this plugin with which the plugin generates a color system. So right now the plugin is using this color that is present here to generate a color system, and you can see that the different palettes of the color system are being generated here, and we are going to find them here in the properties panel. Now if you want to change the color here, you could actually come over here, click on this. Automatically you can now see that by changing the source color, material design or the plugin generates a primary color, a secondary color, a tertiary color, an error color, a neutral color, and a neutral variant color, right? If I click on it again and change the source color, of course I have other core colors, other key colors that are actually unifying with the source color. So the more I keep changing the source color, the more I have, or the more the plugin generates other colors that can actually exist in harmony and be used with with the source color. But in our own case, we already have our key colors, and it is our key colors that we are going to actually put inside this particular plugin to generate a color system. And this is why we spent a lot of time treating how to come up with the key colors, because the moment you can come up with your key colors, you can use that plugin and save yourself a lot of time. So I will come over here and I will select this, which is one of my key colors, and then select the next key color. I'm going to copy all my key colors which I have here in my design file. All right, so these are the key colors that I generated. I'm going to copy all of them, and then I'm going to try to put in these key colors inside this plugin so that it can generate a color system based on my custom brand color. So I'll paste those key colors here, and then let me bring them close to each other. Let me give them distance between item of 24. That's too close. Let me make that 60. So I have that these are the key colors which I have already generated. Now what you want to do is, if you want to generate a color system using this particular plugin, you have to impute the values of these key colors into the plugin, which simply means that you must have already generated these your key colors: your primary color, your secondary, your tertiary, your error, your success color, your warning color, your neutral, and your neutral variant color. So after generating them, you can then put them inside this plugin to generate a color system for you. So how do we do that? Now in this case, right, if I come over here, you could first of all change the name of the folder. Right now, by default, it's set to material team. So I want to change the name of that folder from material team to change it to the name of your project. But in my own case now, I'll put in something like color system. Right, so I'm changing that name now to color system. So that is going to be the name of the folder. You can now see that the name has already changed over here. Now the next thing for you to do is to put in the colors. Now there are different ways to actually come up with your source color. You could come up with your source color from a wallpaper. You could come up with your source color from content generated colors. There are different ways to come up with your source color. Another way is to just pick a source color like we actually did by picking our primary color. So in this case now, our source color, I'm going to put in my primary color as a source color. So I'll select my primary color. After selecting my primary color, I'm going to take note of color code. I'll come over here, copy that code, and then come to the source color, click on this, and then paste that code as the source color, and click on apply. The moment I paste that code as the source color, automatically that color also acts as our primary color, as you can see over here, right? You can see it's the same code as our source color, right? And it's the same color as the source color. After that, now I'm going to put in a secondary color. Now the plugin actually brings up secondary colors and tertiary colors that you could use, but since I already have my colors for my brand, which are my key colors, I just want to put in my key colors and use those key colors to generate my color system, right? So I'll come over here, select my secondary color, I will copy it, and then come over to where it says secondary, click on it, and then paste that color code there, and click on apply. See, I now have my secondary color here. I'll come over here, select my tertiary, copy the color code, come over here, paste it here, click on apply. The same thing for every other color. So I'll go to the error color, copy it, and then paste the code here, click on apply, But over here, what I have next is the neutral color and the neutral variant color, right? But I also have the success color and the warning color here. So let's leave these two out of it first. Let's put in the neutral color and the neutral variant color because this is a plugin by Material Design, right? So I'll come over here, select this particular neutral color, copy the code in my own case, come to the neutral section and paste the code for my neutral color. Click on apply, that's fine. I'll come over here, click on the neutral variant, copy the code, then paste it in here. Click on apply, that's fine. Now remember that Material Design actually told us that if we want to come up with our key colors, we should come up with the primary, secondary, tertiary, error, neutral, and neutral variant, right? But we decided to come up with a custom color system for ourselves, where we actually added two other semantic colors, which are the success color and the warning color. So we are going to include them in here as extended colors. So you can see that we have a region here that says add a color. So I'll click on this and then I'm going to add a color. I will select now my success color, copy the code, and then paste it here under extended colors and click on apply. And then I could change the name from custom color 1 to success color. So I can rename and change it to success. And that's fine. Then I'll click on save. Now I have it there. Then for my warning color, I'll also come over here, copy the code, and then I'll add a color, paste the code there, click on apply, then change the name from color or from custom color 1 to warning, and then click on save. And with that, I have actually included all my key colors into the plugin. Then the next thing I will do is just click on updates, right? And the moment I click on updates, you can see that it is updating all the colors that I've put in as my key colors, and it's creating a color system here in my properties panel. So we are going to go back to our former color system and try to see how we can save them as style guides and repositories while the color system here generated by this particular plugin loads up and gets completed. So now I'm going to go back to our color system, and now that we are done with setting up the color system for lighting, we don't want to manually also come up with a color system for dark theme. So for that reason, we are now using that plugin to come up with a color system for both light theme and dark theme, and also come up with a color system for high contrast, medium contrast, and also for standard contrast, right? So the next thing you want to do is you want to understand how to actually save these colors inside folders or repositories and add them to your style library. That's the next thing that we want to do. And in order for you to save the colors, you need to first of all understand what's going to be the major folder and what's going to be the subfolders that you are going to need, because understanding how to save these colors manually here will actually make it possible for you to understand how the colors are actually saved by this particular plugin that we are using to generate the colors here in the material theme builder, right? So at this point, we are going to learn how to save our generated colors as styles. The first thing you want to do when you want to save these colors as styles is to identify all the folders that you are going to have. If you are able to identify all the folders that you are going to have, you are able to save it as a style and add it to your style library. In order for us to do that, we already know that the general name of the folder is going to be, you can just save it as color system, or you can put in the general name as industry standard color system. In my case, I'm going to have the general name as color system. So I'll just make a copy of this text. This is me trying to get the general name of the folder. So the general name of the folder will be color system. Which is fine. They put a / to make it a folder, and that's fine. Now we are going to have a folder for the key colors. So this is going to be a folder, right? Because in saving these colors, we are going to have system styles and reference styles. Every tone of color you have in the tonal palette is going to be a reference style. So this will be saved as a reference style. This will be saved as a reference style. This will be all your tonal palettes be saved as reference styles. Then all the rows that are defined are going to be saved as system styles, because these are the rows or the colors that you are actually going to be using in your design, right? We've selected these rows out of this particular tonal palette. So these are the system colors that we saved as system styles. So for that reason, we are going to have color system, which is fine. Now we have reference styles and system styles. So over here at the top, you have to put in reference styles. I'll just put in arrow EF, which is fine. For system styles, I'll just put in SYS. Now these are also folders, so I'll put a / to show that that's a subfolder. Come over here, put a / to show that this is also a subfolder. So color system, reference styles, talking about tonal palettes. Color system, system styles, talking about the rows, right? The rows and the key colors that you are going to be using for your design. So after that, it is time to now save these particular rows individually. So we are going to start with the key colors. So we have a folder here. We are going to have a folder for the key colors, which is fine. And those key colors are the colors that we equally have here, right? These ones that are default, they are actually key colors. Then we are going to have a folder for the colors that are stained or that are going to be used as text on the key colors. For example, we are going to have a folder for on primary, on secondary, on tertiary. So we are going to call that folder on key colors. So let's identify the subfolders that we are going to have. We are going to have a folder for key colors. We are going to have a folder for the colors that will stay on them, which are on key colors. I'll just come over here. On key colors. And then we are going to have a folder that is going to contain things like primary container, secondary container, tertiary container. So we are going to call that folder key container colors. So I'll come over here. We're going to have key container colors. And then for each of these containers, like for example, the error container, it has a color on top of it, which is the on error container color. Same thing for tertiary container, it has on tertiary container color. So for that reason, we are going to have, in as much as we have key container color, we are going to have on key container color. Which is fine. And after that, because we now have a folder for the key colors, which is fine, which are these colors that I have here, false colors. We have a folder for the on key colors, which is fine. We have a folder for key container colors. Then we have a folder for on key container colors. And we are also going to have a folder for add-ons, the primary add-ons, which are the additional colors, secondary and tertiary. All right, so we are going to have another folder for add-ons. Alright, so let's see how we could actually save these as a style in our color system. So in order for us to do this now, we are going to start by saving the system colors, which are the actual colors that we are going to use. So I'll bring this here. And the first thing I want to do is I want to save all my key colors, right? So this is going to be color system, right? These are system colors. Now what am I saving? I'm saving my key colors. So I'll come over here and type in key colors. Now, under key colors, this is also a folder, so put under /, right? So, after putting in the naming convention this way, I am now ready to save all of my key colors. So, the first thing we are going to do is that we are going to save the first key color, which is the primary key color. So, I'm going to first of all come over here and we have our primary key color. So, we'll save this first. After that, we are going to save the secondary key color down to the last key color, which is the neutral variance key color. So I'm going to come over here and I'm going to type in primary key color. So this will be primary key color. So now that I have the naming convention ready, I'm going to copy this. And then now I can save my key colors. So I'll bring back my panels and then I'll come over here, select this first color, which is the primary color, and then come over to the properties panel, go over to this particular icon that I have here close to the field. We have this icon over here. Once I hover on it, it says apply styles and variables. So I'll click on it. And then I'll come over to this plus icon that I have over here. I'll click on that. If I click on that, I have this menu come up. Go over here and select styles. I'll click on that. And automatically you can now see the color that you actually want to save. Right? For the name of the color, I'm going to put in that particular naming convention that I've copied. So I'll Ctrl V to put that in. And then for the description, you can put in the properties of this particular color that you are saving, because this is the primary color which is used to actually, or which is mapped to the most important elements of your UI. So for the description, I can click on this. I put in primary color. Now you can actually put in anything in the description field, and then I can just put in something that says mapped to main UI elements, right? And after that, I'll click on create style. And the moment I click on create style, I have saved this as a style here in the properties panels, and this is now part of my style library. The next thing I'm going to do is I'll select the next key color, which is the secondary color. Come back to the properties panel, close to field, go back to this icon, click on it, and then click on that plus icon again. Once this menu comes up, select style, and then paste in the naming convention. In this case, I'll click on Ctrl V and I'll have it there. But this is now the secondary key color. So over here, I'll click on this primary and then change that to secondary. Then after that, you could actually type in a description like the function of the secondary key color. You could put it in the description field. Then when you are done, you click on create style, and I have that saved. Next thing I'm going to do is go to the next key color, select it. We are just going to create for 3 key colors. You could create for all the other key colors when you are actually doing your practice. So we'll go over to the next key color, which is the tertiary key color, and then come to the properties panel, close to field, click on that icon again, then click on this plus icon that comes up, select style, and then also paste in that naming convention, but in this case, change that primary to tertiary. In this case, I have tertiary, and then put in the description text like the function of the tertiary role, and then click on create style. Now, if you don't know the function of the tertiary role, you can simply come to material design, and here in material design, go over to this region that says styles. Once you over on it, you can see that we have this navigation slider come up, and then once it comes up, under color, we are going to get to a region that talks about the color rules. Once I click on that, automatically it takes me to a page that describes all the color rules that we'll actually be talking about, and also tells me how I'm going to use each and every one of these rules. So over here we have them as color rules. Then you can see we have all the rows here. We have the primary row, the secondary row, the tertiary row, the error row, down to the additional rows, which are referred to as add-on color rows, and their description that relates to how each of these rows could actually be used. Now you could read up the applications of these rows, and that's going to help you when you are putting in your description text. So now we've been able to save our primary color, our secondary color, and our tertiary color as part of our color system. So if I come over here and click on my empty canvas, you can see that if I come to the properties panel, I'm going to have a region that talks about color styles, right? Now under color styles, I have a color system. And for the color system, you can see I have my system colors. Now under my system colors, I have the key colors. And what are the key colors? The key colors include the primary color, the secondary color, and the tertiary color, because I've only saved for 3 key colors that I have here. So you can decide to save for all the key colors. So I have my color system, which are which includes system styles. And under system styles, I have my first folder saved. And that first folder is my key colors. And after my key colors, the next folder that I want to save under my color system is going to be my on-key colors. And that's also part of my system colors. So I'll come over here. Instead of key colors, I'm going to put in on-key colors. So I'll type in on-key colors, right? Now for my on-key colors, the first one that I have there is actually the on-primary color. So I'll come back here and then change this from primary key color to on-primary key color. So this is going to be on primary key color. So this is the naming convention that I'm going to use to save all of my key colors. So we've actually created for one folder, right? Now we are creating the colors for the other folder, which is the on key color. So I'm going to copy this naming convention. I'll Ctrl C to copy that. And then go to all the on key colors and begin to save them one after the other. So I'll come over here to this first on key color, which is the on primary color. I'm going to select that. And then come to my properties panel. Close to this fill label here, I have this icon which I can use to actually save. So click on that and then click on this plus icon. Bring this menu here, click on styles, and then when this final menu comes up, you can now paste in the naming convention that we've copied. So this is going to be me clicking on Ctrl V. Now I have this, right? So this first color is going to be the on primary key color. So I have it here as on primary key color. You can type in the description after you've read up all the description or properties or uses of each of these color rows here. You can decide to type in any description and then you click on create style. So with that now, I have the first on key color saved. So after that, quickly just go to the next on key color, which is the on secondary color. I'm going to select this. As I select it, I'll come back to my properties panel, go back to that icon that says apply styles, click on it, then click on this plus icon, select this style over here, which is the style label, and then type in or paste in the naming convention again by clicking on Ctrl V. But in this case, I am no longer saving the on primary key color. I'm now saving the on secondary key color. So I'll change that primary there to secondary. After saving that, after changing that to secondary, you can type in the description text and then click on create style. I have the second on key color saved. After that, I will go to the next on key color, which is on tertiary color, select it. Come back here and carry out the same process. All right. I'll click on this plus icon here, click on style, and then I'll paste in the naming convention. Now in this case, this is the on tertiary key color. So I'll change on primary key color to on tertiary. So I'll click on that primary and change that to tertiary. And then click on create style. Right now you can do the same thing for all the on key colors, which include the on error color, right, on success color, on warning color, including this on surface color that we have over here, all right, and this on surface variant color. So you can do that for all these on key colors, and when you are done, you are going to realize that you now have two folders saved. Now if I come to my properties panel, you can see that I have color styles. Under color styles, I have my color system. Okay, I have my system colors. Then under my system colors, I have two folders. I have my key colors and then I have my on key colors. So if I should expand this folder for my key colors, you are going to see all the key colors that I've saved. In this case, I saved only 3. So I have my primary key color, secondary key color, and my tertiary key color. I'm going to collapse that. Then if I should expand this other folder for the on key colors, you are going to see that I have my on primary key color, on secondary key color, on tertiary key color, just the way we have saved them, right? You can decide to save for all the on key colors that you have over here. So I am done with saving the colors that are under the key colors folder. I'm done with saving the colors that are under the on key colors folder. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to save the colors that are under the key container color folder. So to quickly do that, I will go back to that naming convention now. And in this case, I'm saving for the key container color folder. So I'll come over here. I'm no longer saving for on key colors. So I'll click on this and change this folder name here to the key container colors. So I'll come over here and type in key container colors. And decide to put in a hyphen or put in an underscore to connect the words together, or you can just use space bar to just put in a space between each of the words and you are still fine. So I have the key container colors, right? Under the key container colors, the first one I'm going to save for my key container colors is the primary container. So after that, I'm going to save for the secondary container. After that, I'll save for the tertiary container. So over here, I have first one being for the primary container. So this is going to be for the primary container. So now I have my naming convention for the key container colors ready. So what I'll do is I'll copy this and then go and select each of those key container colors and begin to save them one after the other. So I have the primary container as the first one. I'll select this. Once I have it selected, I'll come over to my properties panel. Of course, come back and repeat the same process. I'll click on this icon that says apply styles. Click on that plus icon there. Bring this here and click on style. Automatically, you are now seeing the color that you want to save. I paste in the naming convention and I have primary container as the first key container color. You can put in your description and click on create style and you're fine. After that, you select the next key container color, which is the secondary container, and then you come over here, repeat the same process, right? I'll click on style, then paste in the naming convention, just that in this case, this is the secondary container color. So I'll come over here. Instead of primary container, I'm going to change that primary there to secondary. And then put in your description, click on create style. After that, I have the tertiary container color. I'll come over here, select this. Then click on this apply styles icon. Then click on the plus icon over there and then click on style. Then I'll paste in again the naming convention. This is now the tertiary container color. So over here, instead of primary container, change that primary again to tertiary container. So this will be tertiary container and I'm fine. Now you do the same thing for the error container color. Do the same thing for the success container color down to all your container colors. Now this is also where you are going to save these surface container rows. Alright, this is where you are going to save surface container highest row, the surface container high row, surface container row, surface container lowest, and then the surface container low row. And when you are done, click on the empty canvas and then come to your properties panel and now have 3 folders there, right? So I have a folder for my key colors. On key colors, now I have a folder for my key container colors, and if I expand this, I have a primary container, secondary container, and tertiary container, since I have saved for just 3 container colors. Right? For your case, you are to save for all the container colors that we actually have as part of our color system. So after the container colors, you are also going to save for the on-key container colors in the same way. So in this case, this is now a new folder. So I'll come over here. Instead of key container colors, I'll just put in on here. On key container, I'll just put in on key. So after on key container colors, I'll come over to the first color that I want to save. Alright, so for the on key container colors, the first one is going to be the on primary container color. So I'll come over here, change this to on primary container. So this will be on primary container. Then you copy this and you carry out the same process. Save all the on key container colors from the on primary container to the on secondary container to the on tertiary container, and then you save finally for the last folder, which are the additional colors or the add-ons that we have over here. So in that case, now I'm going to select this and then type in this name for this folder that has on key container colors. I'll change that to add-ons. All right. So if I want to save for these add-on colors, I'll come over here. I'll change this from on key containers to add-ons. Right, and then I'm going to save for each of those add-on colors that I have. The first one being the primary fixed color, second one being the on primary fixed, the third one being the primary fixed dim, and the last one being the on primary fixed dim. Now for these add-ons, you can decide to use the same naming convention that is used here in material design. All right, Now, what's the naming convention that is used in material design? For material design, I have that the add-ons are divided into 3 folders as well. So for add-on colors, you can see we have add-ons over here, right? Just the way I have it now as part of the name in my naming convention. Then after that, you are going to see that we have add-on primary colors as another subfolder. So after the add-ons, I'm going to have add-on primary colors here in this case as another subfolder. So I will have add-on primary, right? Just where I have it here in material design, add-on primary colors. So add-on primary colors. Then, because this is now going to be the name of the folder or subfolder that is going to contain all the add-on colors for the primary colors, because we have a number of add-on colors for the primary color. All right, so add-ons here is a folder. Under it, I have another subfolder which are add-on primary colors. Now, under it is where I have the colors that I actually want to save. So the first one here is primary fixed, right? So for the naming convention, I have add-on colors. We put a slash to show that it's a folder. Add-on primary colors is also a folder, so we put on that slash. And then the first one is going to be primary fixed color. So this will be primary fixed color. Or you can just put in primary fixed and you are fine. So when you are done, all you need to do is select the naming convention. Now I'll Ctrl C to copy that and then come over to the color that you want to save. In this case, I want to save the primary fixed color, so I'm going to select it. So once I select it, I'll come back here to my properties panel and then click on this icon here. Then click on the plus icon. Once this menu comes up, click on style. You can now see the color you want to save. Paste in your naming convention, and then this is the primary fixed color. Over here I have primary fixed. Now click on create style. Now I have that saved as part of your color system. You can select the next one, which is the primary fixed color, right? And then come to your properties panel again. Click on this icon. Once you've done that, click on the plus icon. Once that comes up, click on style and then paste in your naming convention. Just that in this case, this is no longer the primary fixed color. This is the primary fixed color, right? So I'm going to put in primary fixed here. Go in on primary fixed. All right. Put in your description and then click on create style. Do that for all the primary fixed color that you actually have over here, right? Do that for all the add-on primary colors that you have over here. And when you are done, if you click on your empty canvas, automatically I now have key colors as a folder, on key colors as a folder, key container colors, and then I have add-ons. Now under add-ons, I have the add-on primary color, right? You can now see how it is saved there. I have the add-on primary colors. If I should expand that, I have the primary fixed, the primary fixed, and then you can save for this folder you have over here. And once you come to the next add-on categories, which are for the add-on secondary colors, you are now in another folder of the add-on colors. So you come back to the naming convention and then change this from add-on primary colors to add-on secondary colors, and then this is where you start saving the next color as secondary fixed, right? And then just like that for all the rows that you have over here. Now when you are done, you are going to have a color system with a couple of folders or repositories here on the properties panel that is going to be looking just like what we have in this particular case. Now remember that we already started generating each of these colors and each of the folders in the color system by applying our key colors to the material theme builder. So let's see if we have all the colors ready at this particular point. So since we already fed in our key colors into the material theme builder plugin, material theme builder plugin has now created our color system here on our properties panel. So you can see that under styles, I have color styles, and under color styles, I have color system. If I click on this drop down, I'm going to have, right, I have a white color and a black color, right, which I use as extreme references for our tonal palettes. Then after that, I have my system colors over here. As you click on that drop down, under system colors, I have colors for lighting and the colors for what? For dark theme. And after that, because I have lighting colors based on standard contrast and dark theme colors based on standard contrast. Now remember that we have 3 levels of contrast over here. And if you are to come up with the color system using this material design guide, we are going to come up with color rules for each of these levels of contrast, which include the default level contrast, which is the standard contrast. We have the medium contrast, and then we have the high contrast. So coming up with color rules for each of these contrast levels can actually be very tedious, but with the material theme builder, you can actually do that in just a couple of minutes, just like we've done over here now. Now you can see that under system styles, we have color rules under light theme and the color rules under dark theme. All right. Then we also have color rules under light theme for high contrast. Okay. We have color rules under dark theme for high contrast. We have color rules under light theme for medium contrast. And also we have color rules under dark theme for medium contrast. So we have color rules for light and dark theme for the three levels of contrast. Here you see just light over here, it represents light theme and it represents the default or standard contrast. So if I click on it, you are going to have all these saved color rules for the standard contrast. So I have primary, surface tint on primary, primary container on primary container, secondary or secondary, just like that for all the rows that we've been saving here in our color system in this particular file that we have. Right? So that is for all the rows under light theme and under standard contrast. Then under dark theme and under standard contrast, all the rows are equally here. You can see all the rows here as well. Then after that, if you actually want to make your designs using high contrast, then under light theme for high contrast, you can see all the rows are here. That's why we have light and high contrast. Under dark theme for high contrast, if you click on that, you are going to see all the rows here. The material theme builder has actually brought up all the rows for all the contrast levels. Also, I have light contrast and medium. I have light theme and medium contrast. All the rows are here, right? I have dark theme and medium contrast. All the rows are equally here, right? And then after that, you are also supposed to save each of these tonal palettes as reference colors, because this is where we got the color rules from. So these are system styles, whereas your tonal palettes are actually what? Reference styles. So you have to save these palettes, all the tonal palettes of the key colors. You have to save them as reference colors. But the material theme builder helps us with that as well. And you can see that we have a folder for reference, which is REF for short. And if I should expand that particular folder, let me collapse the system folder and expand the ref folder. You can see that we have a reference folder for the primary color, secondary, tertiary, error, and neutral variant color. So if I should click on it, you can see that over here we have all the tonal values from primary 0, primary 5, primary 10, primary 15, primary 20, primary 25, right? Like I told you that these particular labels here are just naming convention, all right? So we have primary 0, primary 10, primary 20, primary 30, just like we have it here inside our panel now. So we have primary 0, 5, 10, 15, 20 down to primary 100. So that's the reference color for the primary tonal palette, right? We currently have reference colors for the secondary down to the neutral variant. We are going to have reference colors for all the key colors that you've actually included as part of your key colors using the material theme builder. So if I should collapse that, I now know that I have my reference colors there. Then for my key colors, if I expand this, you are going to see that all the key colors that we selected and imputed inside the material theme builder plugin, they are now be placed here as key colors. So we have a primary color, secondary color, tertiary, error color, neutral color, and neutral variant color. But we have two other key colors that are not here. They are going to be saved as extended colors, which we are going to see in a couple of minutes. So if I come over here to this folder that talks about extended, right? Click on that. I have a drop down. You can see that the other two key colors are actually here, which are the success color and then the warning color. When you click on the drop down for the success color, you are going to get it for light theme as well, for dark theme. That is under standard contrast. You are going to get it for light and dark theme under high contrast. And then you are going to get it for light and dark theme under medium contrast as well. The same thing happens for the warning color rules. So let's say you are making a design and you want to actually apply a color to any particular element. I'll come over here, just draw a frame here. Alright? And after drawing the frame, let's say I want to apply a color to this. I'll come over to my properties panel and then click on this icon that says apply styles. As I click on it, automatically you are going to see this menu come up, and then you are going to have all the color schemes that you've saved as part of my color system now. So I have my primary color, surface tint on primary container. You can see that we have all the color schemes for all the rows. Now, since we have all the color schemes for all the rows, you may be wondering if this primary color belongs to, let's say, a high contrast or a medium contrast, or if it belongs to a standard contrast. Any of the color schemes that is not obviously labeled automatically belongs to the default or standard contrast. So this primary color belongs to the default or standard contrast. This surface tint belongs to the default or standard contrast, all right? And that's for default or standard contrast for lighting. Anyone that will belong to, let's say, the medium contrast or to the high contrast will be labeled. Anyone that will belong to dark tint will be labeled. If I scroll down, I'll get to a point where you can see that I have color system in this case. This belongs to what? This belongs to lighting. But the contrast level is equally not shown here. So automatically, this also belongs to the standard contrast. Now, if I keep going, I'll get to a point where I begin to see the contrast levels for medium and high contrast. So if I scroll down, you can see that over here now, I have color system colors, and this is for lighting. You can see these colors are for the high contrast colors. So which simply means that colors that are dark here are going to be very dark. Colors that are light here are going to be very light, so that you can have a good tonal difference at two extremes for a very high contrast. So this way you have all your colors saved here in all contrast levels, and I could decide to easily apply a color to this by clicking on any of these color rows here, and automatically I have a color applied to this. And when I hover on this, you can see the name of the color style. This is actually the primary fixed dim color, as you can see with that label. Right? So that's for that. Now you can actually learn a lot about how to apply these styles by coming to material design and reading up this page that talks about color rules, right? All the applications of the color rules are actually explained here in material design. If you want to learn more about color theory and psychology, you could actually reference the Refactoring UI resource material, all right? And as you come to the Refactoring UI resource material, you can go over to the region that talks about color. Like you can see that the first topic here says starting from scratch, right? Talking about everything in UI design. But since you are interested in colors, go to this region that says working with colors, and then you are going to have the ability to know everything about perceived brightness, all right, and understand different gray levels I talked about in terms of neutral grays, warm grays, and every other thing that you need to know about color as a beginner is here in the Refactoring UI resource material. So now that we are done with coming up with our color system, I will now know how to come up with a color system for both light theme and dark theme, especially by using the material theme builder. The task for today's class, or the bootcamp assignment for every student, is to actually come up with a color system documentation. So for your color system documentation, you are going to actually choose key colors for a particular project or case study that you are working on, right? So choose your key colors, which simply means come up with your primary color, your secondary color, or come up with your brand colors, your semantic colors, and your background colors, just the way we have done. Create tonal palettes for each of those key colors, derive color rules, and then save those color rules as style guides and repositories. Now you are to briefly document the applications or uses or mapping of each of these colors to UI components, and then for the submission, you can share the file for review, right? You can share the Figma file for review once you are done, and then publish the created color system to Behance, and it's going to be part of your portfolio. And if you have any question, you can always reach out to us on our official Twitter handle, which is utechfort_UTF, or you can reach out to the instructor, which is me personally, through my Twitter handle, which is @Prince Umugeli. All right, so that is it for coming up with a color system for both light and dark themes using the material design guide. Now, since we have color schemes over here, if you actually want to come up with this color system manually, you are going to come up with color rules for lighting. All right, for the standard contrast, you come up with color rules for lighting for medium contrast, you come up with color rules for lighting for high contrast, and then you go to dark theme. Once you go to dark theme, you come up with color rules for dark theme for standard contrast, color rows for dark theme for medium, and then color rows for dark theme for high contrast. And that can be a very tedious process. And that is why we had to use the Material Theme Builder plugin to actually come up with each of those color rows for all the contrast levels that we have. So that is it with coming up with an industry standard color system. In our next class, we are going to be looking at the Atomic Design Framework. And then when we begin our high fidelity designs for our current website project, which is a wind turbine website, we are going to see how to actually apply each of these rules when we are mapping colors to components in a UI design. So that is all for coming up with the color system. See you in our next class.